presentations for you today, and we will have our quarterly board meetings throughout the year, and we'll send out the invites for everybody. So a little bit of a change from a year ago. We've had a number of people that have changed in the Center for Safe and Secure Schools. Those of you might have met me. My name is Jesus Amesco. I'm with Harris County Department of Ed. I oversee the Center for Safe and Secure Schools and also the business office. And so the center is one that reports to me, one division that reports to me. Over the last couple of years, you have seen Bonnie Rivera, who you're going to hear from her today on school alerts and update on school alerts. So we've kind of asked her to assist us with that, so she's been in contact with you on those things. Also, Steve Cathy also assists us with radios and transportation and some of the things with the county, liaison with the county. So, and then another gentleman, Jeff McGowan, who also works for the Harris County. He does a lot of our safety audits as well, just like Bonnie and Steve do. Donita, take a look, Donita, to everybody. She's the one that sends out the emails, sends information and calendars and invites. So she's been with us for some time, and glad that she's with us. So, and hopefully our newest member will be Teresa Coronado. So she will be recommended for the Center for Safe and Secure here next month. Got to go through a process of recommendation, but she will be the lead, and so we will be bringing out to you more information out to you, and we'll need more input from you as to what kind of programs you want to see. Recently we've had a couple of videos that we put together on transportation that are available on our website. Steve, you can talk a little bit about that. We also have a hurricane readiness video. It's about 2 or 3 minutes as well that's also available for you. And then we have our membership certificates and information will be sent out probably later on in the month. Some of the certificates that you will receive from the center that you provide the superintendents, and you may want to have those presented at a board meeting or presented to the superintendent. So that's something up to the school district to decide. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask, Tom also will be joining us and working with us later on in the presentation, and we'll also have Mark Sloan later on in the group to kind of work with us. And he's doing a presentation for some of our school districts later on in the month. You didn't bring yeah, you did. You have him here.
I got Senator.
Yes. He's ready to go to Showtime. So welcome you, Tom. Thank you for being here. So and so we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll ask Steve to come up and kind of give a little bit about transportation and radios and what are we doing in that area.
Good morning. Glad to see everybody here this morning. Touch on a couple things right quick. First of all, out on the table, if y'all did not pick up one, there's a letter out there that says draft. It's not in the packet if you grab that alone. So if you don't have anything that looks like this, please pick it up on your way out. Kind of give you an update. If y'all have been involved with the group for a while, y'all know several years ago, and I believe it was in 2006, the center received a grant to purchase handheld radios for all the member districts, and those were issued out to the districts. Because the regional radio system in the next probably year or so is going to be converting from analog over to digital, what y'all basically have now is a bunch of high-dollar paperweights, radios that went out and not capable of making that conversion. So the center has purchased new handheld radios with chargers that we will be, again, distributing out to the district at no cost to y'all. The center paid for these. The way the process is going to work, once we get all the handheld radios programmed, we'll be back in touch with the districts to arrange representatives to come down, pick them up, sign for them. The radios themselves are for y'all's use. They will remain property of the Center for Safe and Secure Schools. However, any maintenance fees usage fees, new batteries, things like that will be at the cost of the district. And that's basically, we ask y'all to cover that, to start providing the radios and the chargers free of charge. Also, if anything happens to the radios, if 6 months after you receive it, it gets knocked off the table, breaks, goes into 1,000 pieces. Since we own the equipment itself, please let us know so we can do our inventory stuff on our side. Let us know that radio is broken. So again, we do have the radios in. We are going to get them over to the regional radio shop, have them all programmed, and we will be back in touch with y'all when the radios are ready to be distributed out. This is just a sample letter, something very similar to this. If not, this actual one is going to be going out to the superintendents when the radios are ready to be picked up. So this is just kind of give y'all a heads up. This is going to be coming down for too much longer. Another thing, a few weeks ago, we sent out transportation resource inventory to be updated by all member districts. As y'all know, the center has been a local agreement between local governmental jurisdictions and all the member districts to act as y'all's liaison to the County Emergency Operations Center if we have a major disaster. It takes a load off y'all because everything that comes in from Harris County, City of Houston, hopefully will be funneled through us, so y'all aren't having to deal with multiple jurisdictions at one time. In some cases, maybe asking for the same thing over and over again. So we actually have positions in the County Emergency Operations Center where center personnel, one of them would be myself, we go over there and act as that buffer between the districts and governmental agencies. One thing that helps us out is to have this resource inventory available to us if the districts fill out. If we have something like the worst case, something like a major hurricane evacuation, if y'all have been in town for a few years, y'all know how that goes, because we get one every once in a while. That helps us route requests for resources to districts that are available, possibly do provide that resource. Doesn't mean that you have to, but it makes our job over there a lot easier trying to represent you guys and trying to funnel out some of these requests to manage. So that originally went out a few weeks ago to all the members of the Ops Board. If y'all are on our mailing list, y'all should have got that. If y'all are an Ops Board member and you did get emails, before you leave, please see Danita and make sure we have an accurate email address. So y'all should have all that. We've already got some of them back. If you want to find out if your district has completed that, get with me before y'all leave today and I'll let you know if that's one of them that we have gotten back in. Please, we don't have to have to be on making it have to go back out, try and fill it out and get it back to us. As Jesus said a while ago, we did make a couple of videos that we distributed to the media. We put this out a few weeks before school started, and hopefully, let's think about it, people. We have two versions of it. One is in English, one is in Spanish. Again, this is available on the website if y'all want to download that. These are for bus safety at the beginning of school, and it's going to show you all right quick.
School is almost 8 times safer than riding in a car. Still, it's important to discuss these safety tips with your children. 1. Talk to your kids about safety and respect. Ridership is a privilege and can be taken away due to bad behavior. 2. Go over your child's bus routine to ensure they get off at the correct stop. 3. Children ages 5 to 7 are most at risk and should have supervision. For more tips, visit www.atde-texas.org/school safety.
Tomar el autobús escolar es 8 veces más seguro que ser transportado a la escuela en el vehículo familiar. De todos modos, es importante que discuta con sus niños los siguientes consejos para ayudar a reducir el riesgo a que ocurran accidentes. Hable con sus niños sobre el respeto y la seguridad en el autobús escolar. La transportación escolar es un privilegio y puede ser eliminado debido al mal comportamiento. Repase con sus niños la rutina del autobús para asegurarse que ellos se bajen en la parada correcta. Los niños entre la edad de 5 a 7 años tienen el mayor riesgo a accidentes y deben ser supervisados. Para más información sobre la seguridad en el autobús escolar, visita la página web www.hcde-texas.org/school safety.
This message was brought to you by the Harris County Department of Education and its Center for Safe and Secure Schools.
This is a side note, that was my daughter in there, and I think I created a monster making a movie star out of her. We did do those to do in English and Spanish on bus safety. We've had talks internally about putting out some more videos. I know some schools that I have been in have large screen TVs in the cafeterias, common areas, sometimes I've been in schools where maybe in the individual classrooms, in downtime before schools, there's some messages that are going out to the students. One thing that we would like to do is possibly put some more of these videos together that will be made available to the member districts, and we can cover a wide range of things like drug awareness, stranger danger, bullying. But we want to make sure that there's enough interest in the member districts for us to put those together for y'all. Inside, if y'all pick up one of these yellow cards, there is a blank piece of paper in here. If y'all have an interest, if there is a special topic that you think maybe would benefit y'all's district, that we could work and partner with y'all to put together some of these videos for the students, please put that information on the card, leave it on the table when you leave, and we'll pick those up. But if anybody else has any questions about anything like that that we could help work with the districts on, please let me know. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think we're going on to Bonnie Rivera, and she's gonna give us an update on Safe School Alerts and some of the project that we're undertaking and the big initiative that we have underway this fall. So again, she'll tell you all about that.
Good morning, everybody. We have been awarded or been given authorization to upgrade our Safety Alerts website. As you know, that website is used for communicating with the emergency operations group in your area about related to any kind of outage that you may have in your district. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's only related to weather, inclement weather. It could be you might have a fire in a particular campus and you need to let parents, you need to let whoever know that you feel needs to have that information. That can be done through the School Safety Alerts webpage. Everybody that your superintendent has assigned to have access to that site has already been trained. And already has had hands-on with the maneuvering within the website and sending out a message. If you have any questions about the school safety alerts, please include that in that yellow form. We are really excited about this upgrade. It's going to give us some refreshing things to the site. We are working diligently with our vendor, and we're hoping that it is out and ready by the spring. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that. Has anybody gone to the School Safety Alert site? Anybody else? Nobody? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll log on really quick. Any questions related to that? How are we currently letting our parents know if we do have inclement weather? Guys?
I'm with a private agency and we use a one-call alert system.
Okay. Do you find that that's been effective?
It's effective as long as we ourselves know about the emergency. But to be tied into a larger system for us would be beneficial because there will be times where you might get information that we might not have.
Is that an expense to your district?
It is.
And you are with what district?
I'm with a nonprofit agency.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not in the school district. I'm with the bond sector.
Okay.
And so we do pay for it.
And if I'm not mistaken, you are one of our newer members.
Correct.
Correct. So what this upgrade is done is for our newer members that were not part of the original districts. This is open to you. This is going to be something that you can actively participate in. And there will be a cost incurred, but I'm sure that we can talk about that as a member. So you will have access to this as well. So this is Safe School Alerts. This is really handy for our first responders because it has the district mapping to it. And in a matter of crisis, this is really important to get a true perspective of where districts meet and where they don't, and where logistically where everything is. So the district now has the ability to go into their own district site. And in time of crisis, where it says status, you can click on your district and that will let you know, or it'll let the general public know whether you have a closure or not. And then within the system, you'll go back in and then you'll resume normal existence. But this is really handy for first responders. This is what it was designed for. The added value to it is that it will communicate to the media. That's an added value. That's not its true purpose. Its true purpose is to help the districts communicate with first responders that there is an issue. We do have a crisis and campuses have been closed. This is going to be really handy in the event that we do have a hurricane and there are closures and we do need to have access to transportation, to fuel. Districts need to cross-pollinate with their information, and your communications person may be on vacation for all we know. So this really is designed for emergency management. And this is one more added value of being a member to the center is that now we become your liaison, as Steve was mentioning earlier. This is one of the tools that we have that we provide as a benefit to you as being a member to the Center for Safe and Secure Schools. Is there any questions related to Safe School Alerts? So in this room right now, who would be responsible to let anybody know whether your school is going to be closed or your district is going to be closed? How are you doing it now?
Oh, we're doing that.
You're doing that? Perfect. I know you guys use it as well. So if you have any questions related to the Safe School Alerts, please let us know. Like I said, if there's anything in particular, please add it to that small yellow sheet in your Safe and Secure School brochure. And that's pretty much what we've got. We are really excited about the upgrade. We are working on it and we're hoping to launch it in the spring. So as we are advancing and the phases are coming, I'm sure we'll be able to let you know and have some more information related to it.
All right, I'm an attorney with Rogers Morrison Gerber, and if you're not familiar with our firm, we do practice mostly school law, so we represent a number of the school districts in this area. And I was asked to give an update on Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code, which deals with safety and security in schools. And actually there were quite a few recent updates that happened in 2013, so they've been in place for a year now. You may not be aware of them, but they have been around for about a year. And then a few that are just now taking place now here in 2014. So one of the big things that Chapter 37 addresses is the school safety and security plan. All school districts are required to put together this plan that involves district employee training, school drills and exercises, coordination with emergency personnel, and an audit every 3 years to see how the plan's working. And this is to address, of course, school shootings and that kind of safety issues, as well as natural disasters such as hurricanes and other situations. For example, the tragedy in West. So it's not just what you would typically think of as school shootings or those kind of issues. And the audit has to be reported to the Board of Trustees of the school district and also to the Texas School Safety Center, which is run by the Texas State. So this plan, like I was speaking about earlier, deals with natural disasters, human-caused shootings, gang violence, anything that threatens the safety of students and school personnel. And so the idea is that it's supposed to mitigate, increase preparedness for these emergencies, response, and recovery after the fact. So the audit that's required every 3 years has 4 components: an intruder assessment, which someone who isn't a member of that school district So the audit, first of all, it doesn't doesn't have to be done by anyone that has a special certification. Ideally, the audit is conducted by a spectrum of people, both school personnel and outside individuals who come together to see how well the plan's working. One thing would be the intruder assessment, where someone comes to the school and sees, nobody knows me, I'm on campus, what's going to happen? How does the plan address that? As well as on-site visits. There's also a component where surveys are conducted of school and personnel, interviews of employees, and the document review. And so the report that's actually submitted to this, the safety and to the Board of Trustees includes these 4 areas within the actual report. Now, after the Sandy Hook shooting recently, there was a little bit of a pop quiz, and they said, all right, all you school districts submit your audit reports. And unfortunately, what happened was a number of the school districts weren't able to even provide the audit reports. 38 school districts didn't submit anything. 40 more were non-compliant with what these plans were supposed to entail. And so basically, what happened was Sandy Hooks happened, and Texas looked at themselves and said, you know, how would we react in that kind of situation? And it wasn't good. Our plans weren't up to where they should have been. And there is an awareness that of course these plans can't address every situation. The idea is that you can only be as prepared as possible. There's no telling what's going to happen. But if we have good plans in place to address as many situations as we can think of, and train our employees that if a tragedy happened, we can at least mitigate the damage and do as well as possible to prevent and minimize the damage. These reports, these audits aren't open for request through the Freedom of Information Act, obviously, because if you do have a criminal or someone who's planning a school shooting, you don't want them to have access to these reports to be able to identify what's going to happen and how do I counteract that with my attack. But there are certain exceptions to that open records request that they are available, limited exceptions. Okay, so the new thing that's just come about after this Sandy Hook shooting and many of the school districts weren't complying as they should have with these school safety plans is a new certification program. The Texas legislature created a certification program. They've also created a safety task force. That's a group of different organizations that are coming together to see how can we guide school districts to develop better plans. And they're going to report back to the Texas legislature whatever they come up with. So this new certification, any school district that has adopted and implemented the appropriate multi-hazard emergency operations plan that addresses the areas, security, communications with parents and media, and it's important to note that these plans aren't just within the school districts. There's big emphasis that these plans need to incorporate outside groups. Both emergency personnel and parents and members of the community are all ideally supposed to be encompassed in this plan. And then they've also, school districts are required to conduct drills, and whether they did conduct those drills at least once during the year. And the required drills are school lockdown, evacuation, weather, reverse evacuation, and shelter in place. And that needs to be done at least once a year, and then fire drills are on a monthly basis. So far, we should see that a number of school districts are getting certified this coming year. Last year, Aledo ISD was recognized as the Texas School Safety Center Certificate of Excellence. And Aledo actually sent a group up north for a week-long training on safety. And so hopefully the emphasis is if something does happen now where the school districts are becoming more prepared, and hopefully the certification program will assist with that. Another thing with addressing danger issues is school marshal is a new creation by the Texas legislature. The school marshal, there can be one employee per 400 students that is appointed in this position. It's either appointed by the school board or the Organizational Effectiveness Center in school. And this individual holds their CHL, has completed a Marshall training program, and has passed a psychological test. And this individual can be reimbursed for participating in the training program. So it may be somebody who doesn't have their CHL but is chosen, goes and gets a CHL, passes the training, passes the psychological test, and then becomes the school marshal. And the idea behind this is, as we learned at Sandy Hooks, there's a delay. As much from 10 minutes for emergency personnel to get on site, in more rural areas up to 45 minutes to an hour for law enforcement and other emergency personnel to actually reach the schools. So school personnel are, in a sense, the first responders. They're there in the trenches, they're when it's happening, and what's terrifying is that they don't have any law enforcement training at all, for the most part. They're teachers. And so the idea behind this is we need somebody who's actually in the classroom who has the ability to respond right then and save students' lives, save educators' lives by being armed in true Texas style. So there's a couple of requirements, like I mentioned. The training program is offered the Texas Law Enforcement Commission. It's 80 hours, so 2 weeks of training for strategies for preventing and handling school shootings, legal issues. So when and when not can you legally draw your weapon and fire, that sort of thing. Effective law enforcement strategies, responding to emergency situations. And then the other aspect of that is psychologically fit. We want people who, if they are in that emergency situation, can respond with a cool-headed, with a clear response and be able to assess the situation and react appropriately. So there is this psychologically fit aspect to being qualified to be a school marshal. Rules, if you are a school marshal, if you don't have regular contact with students, you can carry your concealed handgun on you day-to-day walking around campus. However, as a practical matter, not many school marshals aren't going to have regular contact with students. So most school marshals will probably have the gun locked within easy reach. So if you're a teacher, that would be within your desk even, locked in a drawer. Which of course is a little concerning, that this individual needs to be able to keep that locked and remember not to allow the students to have access to that weapon. So to kind of help with that, they're only allowed to use frangible ammunition that will, when it hits the target, will break apart and cause minimal damage. So if somebody who isn't supposed to get shot, they won't get hurt as badly, is the idea. But hopefully that school marshal will have their head on straight. That is what they're trained for, and that's why they're selected by the school district. Now, although they are allowed to have a weapon on campus, possibly even on their body, they can only access that weapon in situations that would justify the use of deadly force for safety and protection of others. Again, the idea is that this school marshal is only there for emergency purposes for that first 10 minutes when nobody else is there, when actual trained law enforcement can't be there to help. So when the trained law enforcement get there, school marshal is off duty. And he doesn't need to put himself on duty unless the circumstances require that. And so that's part of the training too, is when can you pull that weapon? Is a fight between two students a good time to pull that weapon? Probably not. If another student pulls a knife, maybe. So that will be a lot of judgment call on the part of the marshal. This school marshal certification license position lasts for 2 years until the marshal's birthday. So if he was licensed, say in April of 1 year, and it would last for another 2 years, and if his birthday is in October, he remains licensed until his birthday comes. If he's terminated from his position with the district, then he's no longer a school marshal. He can't come back on campus with his gun and pretend to be a school marshal. He can also be removed from that position by the Board of Trustees if they decide for whatever reason that he or she doesn't need to be a school marshal anymore. Or if the CHL is ever suspended or revoked, then automatically the school marshal position is pulled as well. So powers and protections, again, the full authority of the peace officer, which is a lot considering, again, they've only had 2 weeks of training, and the CHL training to get that, but not a lot of training compared to what law enforcement go through. So again, they're only there to prevent or abate the commission of an offense on school premises. Only very limited circumstances that the school marshal would come about. The identity of the school marshal is supposed to be kept confidential. This makes sense because you don't want people to know who is armed. If a shooter comes on campus, you don't want them to know who they need to shoot first. And so the identity is confidential from everyone except obviously the Board of Trustees who hired him or appointed him. And then also if there are law enforcement, school police, then the chief of the school police is notified who the school marshals are, as well as the chief of local law enforcement. In addition to school marshals, there's also some handgun training for any school employees who have their CHL. So what the Texas legislature has done here is they've kind of geared what the qualifications for instructing this kind of course are. The instructor, the CHL's instructor can also provide this safety training for school personnel who have their CHL. And the idea on this is, again, that more people who have training within the school district to react if there's a shooting or some other emergency situation. And again, this could be something that's incorporated back in your safety plan to have maybe other employees go and attend this safety training if they have their CHL, as an added protection for students and personnel. So there are school districts in Texas that are already taking advantage of the school marshal system. If you haven't heard or seen this news report, Argyle ISD actually posted this sign outside their school district saying that their personnel are armed and ready to defend their students. So it is something that, for at least the time being, appears to be here to stay, and school districts are embracing it. Texas, even though we have a reputation for being gun-toting, isn't the only state that has gone to this kind of system. South Dakota, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Tennessee, as well as Alabama have all implemented laws in the wake of Sandy Hook to allow school employees to carry guns. So there, as a general rule, of course, no weapons are allowed in school. And certain prohibited weapons are there's it's a special criminal offense if you were caught carrying a weapon on grounds. One switch to that is the switchblade is no longer one of those prohibited weapons. For a number of years it was one, and it could carry anywhere from a Class A misdemeanor, and then other weapons are higher offenses. But a switchblade is no longer a prohibited weapon. Maybe just because it doesn't make sense, because so many people carry a pocket knife, which counts as a switchblade. But for whatever reason, that's no longer a prohibited weapon. And when I speak about school grounds, that's not just actual, within the classrooms. That includes anywhere that school activities are taking place. That would include football games, that kind of thing. Another change to this is active peace officers, special investigators, and honorably retired peace officers have always been allowed to carry. The change is that also now qualified retired peace officers, and when I say qualified retired, I mean they had less than 15 years of experience before they retired. They're also allowed to carry as long as they have ID identifying themselves as being qualified. And also former reserve law enforcement with 15 years experience. So if someone has 15 years and then they quit or go to a different profession, they're still allowed to carry. So just more additional safety, hopefully allowing more people to have weapons in case something happens. Qualified people have weapons. Okay, some other changes, hopefully for protection for children. trafficking in porn. So it's been a big topic lately is child trafficking, and the Texas legislature has tried to respond by making more tough punishments for people who are involved in trafficking. And one thing new since 2013 is that protective orders are now available for victims of trafficking. Protective orders are a court order saying that the person who the protective order is against can't come within 500 yards of the victim's home or school. And in the past, protective orders are for family violence and dating violence. So there's that relationship required, that you're either, my dad, my mother, or I was in an intimate relationship with you, in a dating relationship. Now victims of child trafficking can also get this protective order. And what's important here is that child trafficking, of course, requires to be convicted of that beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, say for example, the prosecution can't prove, or for whatever reason, they get a not guilty. So the person isn't convicted of child trafficking. A protective order has a lower burden of proof. It only requires a reasonable fear of safety, that person is in reasonable danger of being hurt or harmed as a result of the trafficking. And so now victims have this other opportunity for greater safety, that these traffickers can't come within 500 yards of their school or their home. So hopefully it will help to alleviate some of what we've seen recently of the trafficking issues. Even as close as Lee City recently had issues with child trafficking. Another change is child pornography has now been brought in to address porn on your phone. So if you intentionally or knowingly access porn on your phone, that is in itself possession of child pornography. And the photos, it can't just be of child, it has to be a child engaged in a sexual act. But what's interesting here is child pornography is one of the offenses that pulls you under trafficking. So if you're intentionally accessing child pornography on your phone, you're also committing child trafficking. So you go from a 3rd-degree felony, 2 to 10 years, to a 1st-degree felony, which is child trafficking. So you're looking at, for accessing porn on your phone, child porn, you're potentially facing lifetime in prison. So a lot tougher than it has been in the past. Okay, another change in chapter 37 is school offenses. So up to this point, I've been kind of talking about outside forces endangering school children and personnel. School offense new legislation addresses dealing with kids in the school and how how they're disciplined. And when I say school offenses, that's Class C misdemeanors. So fine only, up to $500, and a school offense has to be committed by a child enrolled in the school and on school grounds. And that could include disorderly conduct, disruption of class, actually I'll talk about that later, trespass, minor possession of alcohol, that kind of thing. Assault, offensive touching, and bodily injury. So why this has come about is in the last few years, there's been a huge increase in children being sent to court for these school offenses. And the problem is that the courts are getting overloaded with all of these Class C offenses that administration got to the point where they felt like they couldn't deal with the kid anymore, they weren't getting through, and so let's send them to the courts and get them shocked into behaving, was kind of the mentality behind it. But as a practical matter, these offenses, which are heard in justice courts in more rural areas or municipal courts if you're in the city, their dockets were just getting so crowded. And so courts who usually had a docket of maybe 1 day a month were going to 2 and 3 days a week just to deal with all of the school offenses that were coming through their courts. And prosecutors, and actually I'm a former prosecutor, and when we dealt with these dockets, it went from, within a span of years, went from a sprinkle of really bad situations to an entire docket full of children school offenses. And it was just increasing more than the court could handle. And so the new public policy that the Texas legislature has really been pushing is that discipline should be in the classroom, not in the courtroom. And that sending kids to court for these school offenses is a misuse of judicial offenses, and it's needlessly exposing these kids to the criminal justice system. Because you have, on one hand, maybe it shocks them into behaving. On the other hand, you have the possibility that they're getting desensitized to the criminal system. That, oh, I've been to court before, I've talked to a prosecutor, no big deal. And so hopefully the idea is to go away from that with this new legislation. So to handle that, one of the new changes is that students under 10 lack the mental capacity altogether to commit these offenses. So because there's this element that they need to commit it knowingly or intentionally, the Texas legislature is saying anyone under 10 cannot knowingly, intentionally be disorderly or commit assault or any of the other class misdemeanors. So that wipes out that entire group of students. Okay, ages 10 through 14, they're presumed to lack capacity, but then the prosecution can rebut that presumption. This really doesn't make any sense because the prosecution has the burden of proof anyway, presumed innocent until proven guilty. So they were already presumed to not have the mental state, and it was already on the prosecution to prove mental state. So this really has no meaning at all. So thank your Texas legislature for wasting paper. Ages 10 through 16. So your biggest group of kids who are going to be sent to court most often are going to be committing these offenses probably. There's a switch from citations to sworn complaint. School districts that have law enforcement for the school were previously allowed to just issue citations. So a school officer who sees a kid in a fight, instead of maybe sending him to the principal's office or whatever, he can just write him a ticket right there and send him to court. It's like a traffic ticket. There's a couple of problems with this. When they got to court, the prosecutor had a ticket that said, kid got in fight. That doesn't tell the prosecutor anything. And so then they're having to make a plea deal with this kid or take it to court to an actual trial without knowing any of the back of what actually happened. The other problem with this is when that kid actually got to court, the officer's not there, the teacher's not there. So there you don't have this kid with an angelic face and his parent who's taken off work. I mean, there's the other problem with sending all these kids to court. So all their parents are having to come with them, which can be good if it gets their parents to get kicked into gear to discipline, or can be bad if the kid doesn't show up and they get another failure to appear, which is another Class C misdemeanor. So the problem is that when the kid actually got to court and they only had a citation that said a very short statement of what happened, there wasn't any grounds for a prosecutor to tailor, or for the court to tailor appropriate punishment for the kid. They had nothing to go on. And so a lot of these would just be thrown out, especially when you're dealing with prosecutors who are coming down from misdemeanors and even felony courts who have dealt with, I just tried a case with a husband sexually assaulting and stabbing his wife, and then go to a kid who offensively touched the boy, poked the kid next to him. And the prosecutor doesn't know that, the kid has been fighting for the last 6 months, maybe. So anyway, so there's a lack of communication there that was causing big problems. So now there's this sworn complaint, and the sworn complaint has to include a couple of elements. It has to be from somebody who has personal knowledge of the underlying facts. So the teacher or officer who actually saw what happened, probable cause to believe the offense was committed by this particular student, and whether the kid is eligible or receives disability services, which is also important for a prosecutor and the court to know if the kid has any special disability that might need to be factored into their punishment and maybe what caused to tailor an appropriate punishment. So, in addition to the sworn complaint, it also needs to be accompanied by an offense report and a statement by a witness and a statement by the victim. So all of these additional documentation might be a headache to administration, school administration, because it's a lot more paperwork, but it's a lot more helpful to the courts and the prosecutors to be able to tailor appropriate punishments for these school offenses that actually need to be in the court system. Another change is there's graduated sanctions now. School districts can, they don't have to, but they can develop systems for graduated sanctions that before a kid can be cited for a criminal offense, these school offenses, there has to be a number of graduated sanctions that occur beforehand. And these might be a behavior contract that the kid signs that he'll behave in a certain way for a certain amount of time, a warning letter sent home to parents, counseling, that sort of thing. So other punishments before you get to the extreme of sending the kid to court. And also important is, and this was a boon to district attorneys' offices who were complaining about the number of school offenses they were dealing with, is that this process for the sworn complaint is subject to the oversight of the district attorney's office. This is important because, and I failed to mention this earlier, this sworn complaint not only can be issued by the school officer, but also by the school administration. So this means that principals or other disciplinarians potentially have quasi-law enforcement abilities through this legislation, subject to the prosecutor, who can implement certain procedures for this sworn complaint to be issued. And that might be a checklist of what needs to happen, and it might be a filtering system, whatever the prosecutor comes up with. Students over 17 can still be issued just a citation, and they can also be arrested. A warrant can be issued for their arrest, which under 17 they cannot. A warrant can't be issued for their arrest. So the idea here is 17s are almost like adults, and they don't need as great of protection. Students of all ages no longer can be convicted of disruption of class or disruption of transportation. Previously, those were 2 Class C misdemeanors that kids could be charged and convicted of, which are very low burden to qualify for disruption of class or disruption of transportation. So no longer do those exist for students. One change is that now kids can be removed from the school bus for conduct by the school bus driver, which is a very good change since previously kids could only be removed from the classroom or disciplinary alternative education program. So now school bus drivers can remove kids for misbehavior, which is helpful because there's these huge spans of time when the kids aren't subject to any other disciplinarians, and this helps keep other kids on the school bus safe by this new change. Okay, there's also a change. Although kids can no longer be convicted of disruption of class or disruption of transportation, parents can be. If you're a non-student, you can be convicted of disrupting class or transportation if you commit these actions on school property or within 500 feet. So about a football field and a half from the school. If you're disruptive, you can still be charged with this Class C misdemeanor, which could be very helpful for soccer parents and other overzealous individuals. So, of course, this is only a $500 fine, up to a $500 fine, so we're not talking jail term or anything, but this is one change. And disrupting can be emitting a noise that hinders a classroom instruction, enticing a kid away from class, coming into a classroom. These are all examples of disrupting the class. And this is not just within school property, it's also on school, when I say school property, it can also be like football fields again, or softball fields, or any kind of athletic activities. So although a kid can't be convicted of disruption of class or disruption of transportation, disorderly conduct may be something that a kid can still be charged and convicted of if he's over 12 years old. Under 12, disorderly conduct isn't a possible misdemeanor offense, but over 12, that is a possibility. And what's interesting is the new change is that disorderly conduct is various disorderly activities on public property. But the Texas legislature has changed the definition of public property from, public places to include school property specifically. So that means that there's no question at all if this disorderly conduct happened on school property that was a public place and may constitute disorderly conduct. Okay, there's also been the change with school peace officers. In addition to the sworn complaints change, previously school peace officers had administrative functions by law. That has been removed, so now they only have law enforcement functions. And the idea here is that the school peace officers are not supposed to be an extension of the principal's office. They are their own entity. They are there for the safety of the schools, and they are not there necessarily for disciplinary reasons. They're to keep the students and the school personnel safe. Along with that, the chief of the school peace officers is only accountable now to the superintendent. Previously, he was accountable to both the superintendent and the superintendent's designee, which could include a principal or whoever's doing disciplinary on the campus. So again, that's a change to give the school peace officers greater autonomy to keep the schools safe. School officers may also now arrest a student by non-custodial means, so they can arrest a student by not handcuffing him, but by just holding him within a room, say a classroom or cafeteria, as another means to arrest the child. And peace officers may refer students to the First Offender Program for school offenses as well. The First Offender Program is for first-time offenders, or students who, instead of getting charged with a crime, there's a program that's kind of like probation, that instead of getting the charge, before that happens, the kid is sent to this program. There has been one developed in Houston in conjunction with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and it's very family-focused counseling to try and correct the problem. If the kid complies with all of the requirements of this first offender program, then the situation goes away and he doesn't have the mar of the Class C misdemeanor on his record. He's never actually charged with the offense. Another change is the punishment for ages 10 through 17, and this is a great change because previously, if a kid was sent to court for a Class C misdemeanor, typically he was going to get a fine of court costs as part of his punishment. Now a court can order the child to perform community service or obtain tutoring instead. So this means that, as a practical matter, a kid who is showing up to court with his parent in tow, a lot of times the parents are paying the fine. The kid's 13 years old, he doesn't have a job, hopefully, and so really the punishment was to the parents, and this tailors the punishment more to the child, to hopefully a greater impact. The court can also order no court costs or fine at all if he usually finds that there either any of these community service, tutoring, or fine or court costs would be an undue hardship. So it's a good change. Juvenile case managers are now may be hired by school districts.
I was just going to let you know that last slide is on this.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That was a late addition. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Juvenile case managers are individuals who may be employed by the school district now, and they are supposed to help to administer the court's juvenile docket and supervise the court's orders in juvenile cases. So when a kid goes to court, is convicted, a lot of times with probation requirements, a lot of this occur in school or related to school. And so now this allows an individual who's actually on campus to help make sure the kid is complying with their probation requirements. And this also takes a burden off of teachers who now have help to, for one, know what the kid is supposed to be required to do by court order, and how another person help keep the kid walking the line of what they're supposed to be doing on their probation sentence. Along with this, these juvenile case managers are supposed to provide prevention and intervention services to at-risk students. So just another person in the trenches to help with discipline and to keep these other kids safe and keep school personnel safe as well. Criminal record confidentiality has been increased, so now all records relating to school offense are confidential. Previously, it was only actual convictions. So a lot of these, if they were discharged through the first offender program or another means so that a conviction did not actually result, maybe it was actually dismissed, there was still that record of the actual charge of the school offense. And now all of those are confidential, including those held by law enforcement. Now, principals have additional training required every 3 years, and this training is specifically geared towards when is the teacher's discretion to remove a student from class, when is it within the teacher's discretion to keep the kid out of class and not allow the kid to return until the teacher says it's okay. And the idea here is that principals are supposed to have disciplinary power and to help discipline the child, but they aren't there in the classroom. And so there's been an emphasis by teachers that they know if it's not safe for that kid to be in their class. And it should be their decision when the kid is allowed to return to the class. And so this is training specifically geared to that, mandatory every 3 years. Okay, and we'll end with fake weed on a high note. There's been a change, a new addition to what teachers and school personnel might see as a potential criminal offense in the school. The salvia divinorum, probably just butchered that, is also known as fake weed or serenity, and it's used for hallucinogenic. You want to hallucinate? Take this. You chew on it, you can smoke it. It's really not that, it's not that bad. It's non-addictive, there are no long-term effects that anybody knows of. And this has just recently been added to the criminal offenses for drugs. It's a penalty group 3, which is higher than marijuana. Penalty group 3 includes Valium, Ritalin, Xanax. And to give you some perspective of the punishment that's looking for kids that are found on campus with this, less than 28 grams or 2 teaspoons, they're looking at a Class A misdemeanor. Higher than 2 teaspoons, and it's a state jail felony even. So, not really sure. There was one Texas legislator that decided that this was important to be added to the drug list. What is a little concerning about it is it looks similar to pot. It doesn't have any smell at all, and so you can actually mask the scent with coconut or vanilla or anything else. And it does have very forceful impact for only about 5 minutes. It's short-lived, but seeing things, bright lights, so a kid that chooses this in the bathroom and comes out can be a danger to himself or others if he's tripped out for about 5 to 10 minutes. So that's it. Is there any questions? Yes.
I have one. And talking about if you have an employee come to work for you, a teacher, and he's a retired police officer, honorably retired police officer, he's got 15 years, is he still able to carry his firearm?
Yes.
Even in the classroom?
Believe so.
But as an employee, the board would have to approve that, because it's not part of his ongoing job as an employee.
That's separate. My understanding, and I'd have to research that specifically, but because it doesn't fall under the school marshal, which is a separate exception, these qualified individuals are allowed to on school property. Although, that can be altered by district policy. So even though by Texas law they could, a lot of districts have policies that would prohibit that. Any other questions? If anything comes up or you have any later thoughts, feel free to call or email me and I'll be happy to answer or find an answer for you if I don't know off the top of my head. Thank you very much.
Again, please help me welcome Tom Penny.
Thank you, Casey. Here's the nice thing, you guys don't have to take notes during my section, so this is good. All the notes are actually on your two-page handout. Everybody did get a two-page handout, right? Yeah. Back and forth? Okay, great. What this is a two-page reference handout. When I go in and inspect schools in the unincorporated areas, there are 18 school districts in the unincorporated area that the Harris County Fire Marshal is responsible for. I do about 7 of them. Spring, Aldine, Klein, Side Fair, Katy, Tomball, Waller, and Aileen. Good, that's the number right there. It's about 200 schools approximately, or something like this. So 5 years ago, when I started doing this on a real regular basis, I'd end up running into the APs or the principal, the guidance counselors, and sometimes it was the school secretary that actually walk with me on the campus and say, okay, can you kind of give me an idea? I'm not an inspector, but kind of give me an idea of what we need to do to get ready for you, because I don't want to show up as a gotcha inspection. I want to go attaboy type of inspection. So what I do is I broke it down into about 5 or 6 different categories according to the IFC, the International Fire Code 2006 version. Now, in your particular jurisdiction, your mileage may vary just like your car, but it may be a little bit different code, but 90 to 95% of the stuff that we're going to cover today is pretty much in your local fire code. It may be Tomball, it may be Humboldt, it's just a different code number. But I broke it down according to categories as far as evacuation, storage, electrical, portable space heaters, decorations, and fire protection. In the boldface type is what it actually says in the code. You guys could care less about what that means. You want to know, okay, what do I need to do to be in compliance? There's the italicized stuff, the layman's terms. So this is something I hand out when I go out on every inspection. If they don't already have it, they've got it and we walk through it, because they become the resident experts when I leave. I want them to feel comfortable with it. They've got enough to do on their plate right now, but I want to make it understandable and enjoyable, well, maybe not enjoyable, but at least palatable, okay, to understand what we're looking for in fire inspection. So I built this PowerPoint presentation that coincides with these sections, because everybody says a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, this is probably worth 1,000,000 words. So let's go. This is what we're going to be talking about, means of egress, how to get out. Storage, extension cords and surge protectors, electrical maintenance, combustibles, not exceeding 20% of the wall coverage, fire protection systems penetrations, and non-compliant evacuation maps. These next series of pictures are actual pictures I took in schools. The district shall remain nameless to protect the innocent. Okay, so to show you guys, I'm not making this stuff up. This is what we find. But people do not realize the implications of this until I take a few minutes to explain it to them. And I like to make my inspections teaching inspections because of the venue that I'm at. And I'm finding out I get better feedback as a result of that. I've been doing Ralph's district over at Sci Fair probably for close to 10 years, and they love me out there. I'm sorry that they do, because I try and make it a pleasurable experience so they feel better about themselves. Luckily, I haven't had to find anybody or call Ralph's office and say, okay, I'm putting Superintendent Anthony in jail because their chain's on the back door. Okay, I only had to do that one time in one district, and we got the chains off the back door like in 5 seconds. So anyway, non-compliant fire safety evacuation maps. This is the one that was actually by the door in the classroom, and it's actually a layout of the entire school. So I asked the teacher, where are we and how do we get the hell out of this room? She decides to go ahead and hold it up and turns it about 3 ways to Sunday. Can't figure it out. Well, wait a minute, you've been here for 4 months and you don't know where you are? How am I the first day that I come in there be expected to be able to get out? So, what I tell everybody is you don't necessarily have to make the whole school. If I were a student, I put myself in this position. If I'm in room 2132, I could care less if the guys in the gym get out. I want to be able to get out. So, let's make it easy for them. We can do it by wing. We can do it by floor level. Some sections, I think in spring, they have towers, okay? Do it by a tower. I want to know that when I look at that, and it needs to be in close proximity to the exit door, not behind the teacher's desk on the other side of the room. I've actually seen this in fire drills, folks. They'll go, okay, how do you get out? Hang on. Okay, no, wait. Okay, so that is not the time. Okay, it's just like that horror movie, get out, get out, get out. Okay, where's the call coming from? Inside the house. Okay, that's the whole deal. And you go, yeah, Tom, but you put it on the slide cattywampus. No, I haven't. I have it that way because if I'm standing at this door and I'm in room 102, I know that my primary means of egress is right there. The minute I step out that door, my secondary means of egress is a little further down the hall immediately to the left. No instructions. I may have a little legend that shows that, but I want to orient it to the point when I enter that corridor, where do I go? Make it simple. Literally, do the KISS formula on that. So you can break it down any way you want, but that's what I'm looking for. In high schools, I'm looking for this height level, being posted near the exit door of the classroom. Where do you think I'm looking at an elementary school level? Yeah, guess where I usually find them? The teachers, okay. Oh, okay. Now, cannot store within 24 inches of the ceiling. Now, storage is different than display, decorations, and instructional aids. What do you do when you store stuff? Usually put in boxes, right? Probably jam as much stuff as you can up there. These ceiling tiles have a certain fire retardancy rating. The National Institute on Standards of Technology determined that if stuff that's combustible, and when I say combustible, the fire technical term for the definition of combustible is anything capable of burning. Wood, paper, plastic, styrofoam, foam, rubber, corrugated cardboard, cloth, anything like that. If it's on fire, there will be direct flame impingement on these ceiling tiles. They are fire retardant, not fireproof. If they do start burning, they'll fail earlier. When they fail earlier, it's not the fire that kills us in the fire, right? It's the smokes and the toxic vapors, okay? That stuff goes into the area that's called the interstitial space. It's just a fancy $4 college word that means the void area between the suspended ceiling and the floor deck or the roof deck for this particular floor level. What do you think's in that void area? Electrical, what else? Insulation, what else? What? Air conditioning ducts. In this particular room, I have ducts that cool in here, but I've also got intake. So if the fire starts in this particular room, all the stuff is going in there, it's getting sucked through the main AHU unit, air handling unit, and you're wondering why the kids are passing out in the library from carbon monoxide poisoning. That's why. So if I keep it 24 inches away, these ceiling tiles will do what they are designed to do. Okay? Now we're talking about storage. Now, I will say in deference to some schools, we never try and do inspections right at the end of school or right at the beginning of school because we know what the book rooms look like. Right? Now, again, when we're talking about storage, storage is different than decoration, display, and instructional aids. If they have models of the solar system, if they have artwork, if there are student projects, trophies, awards, plastic plants, that's fine. But they're still combustible. So the $64,000 question is, why would we allow display, decoration, instructional aids, but not storage? They're both combustible. Anybody have any guess? Without looking at your notepad?
So to drop down, finish to drop down?
No, non-sprinkler building. What do you do when you store stuff? You put as much stuff up there as you can, right? I tell the art teachers, I do not count how pretty the corrugated cardboard box is. It is not display, decoration, or instructional aid. It's storage. So usually what I ask the APs is, okay, if you want to catch them and just find out, don't ask them the closed-ended question. Do you store stuff? They'll lie to your face, just like a teenager. Ask them the open-ended question. What do you do with that? Well, that's why I store X in the man's word, take it out. Code says store it. You told me store it, take it out. Okay? And store it. That's it. But when you display, it's spread out, isn't it? You're proud of it, aren't you? There's less of a fuel load up there. In other words, stuff that'll burn. So that's the reason we'll allow that. But they better be able to qualify what that stuff is. Okay? When we talk about the sprinkler heads, it has to be 18 inches from the sprinkler head diffuser plate. That's that little pinwheel thing that's sticking down on these. It's 18 inches from this. Here's the problem. In some schools, they're totally sprinkled. In some schools, it's partially sprinkled. In some schools, it may be certain areas of high hazard that it's sprinkled. In some schools, it's not sprinkled at all, but because of the addition that they put on, now that's sprinkled. Okay? So what do I do, Tom? Some of them have 3-inch pendants that stick down. Some of them have a discussion plate with a nice little cover. I don't know if it drops down or it stays flush with the ceiling. Some of them are the 6-inch pendants. What do I do? Just make it 24 inches total. It makes it so much easier. There's less guesswork. Again, they have enough problems to deal with on that. That's the reason you want to keep it that way. Let me back up one place. Okay. Here's the other reason why you want to keep it 18 inches from the sprinkler head. And we'll talk about the diffuser plate. Give me your finger. Nice try. You hold it up like this. Now, let's make believe that I'm watering your yard. I'm using what's called a power cone configuration on the sprinkler hose nozzle. And I'm watering it like this. Because this is an obstacle, what occurs in an ever-increasing arc behind your finger, does it get wet? It stays. There you go. That's why. You're impacting negatively the efficacy of that sprinkler head. Just move it down. Easy to do. But Tom, storage is an issue. That's fine. Just find someplace else. 2 feet. Simple. 2 feet. You're supposed to keep anything 3 feet radius of an electrically energized source. Those 2 main power panels in there are electrically energized. They don't call them deadband doors for nothing. They keep those doors on there because those are heat sources. They can heat up things in reasonable and close proximity. Look at the combustibles that I've got there. Also, it needs to have easy access. If I have an electrical problem, I need to, by the code, be able to walk up, usually a 3-foot wide path, minimum 30 inches, open up that door and flip the appropriate switch. I can't do that there. I have to move stuff out of the way. Now, technically, they shouldn't store anything in there, but we kind of give them a little variance. They go, guys, if you could take that stuff and shift it over so there's a clear, unobstructed path, we'll work with you on that. But this has got to go. Okay. It's just a hot water heater. What's the problem? It's water. It's 55 gallons. Well, in this case, it's 110. What's the problem with that? It's a gas water heater. You see the vent pipe? Okay. You see this stuff here. Photo does not capture what's down here. Do I dare tell you what janitorial supplies are here? Here's the problem they had at this particular school. The pilot light kept going out. So the custodial staff had to go back there, or property management had to keep coming back and lighting it. Well, they got sick and tired of putting that door on and door off. They left the door off all the time. You know what happens when your hot water heater actually starts heating up? It's called a diametric hot water heater. It's already hot, why do you need to heat it? Okay, so it's a water heater and you're heating it back up. That flame grows. It can literally bake and dry out any of those combustibles, especially corrugated cardboard. I've made 5 fires in my career. The guys have had corrugated cardboard boxes stored within 6 inches of one of those cover plate things. Listen, over a period of months, it dried out the cardboard. Didn't have to have direct flame engagement to ignite those combustibles. Just the radiant heat ignited it, and they had a garage fire. Just keep it away. I have to have free and unencumbered access. Now, when the school district buys a school and they decide on the architect and they design this stuff, they have a reason for making the hallways X amount of feet wide and X amount of doors at the end. It has to allow for a certain number of people to expeditiously exit that building. So they know, based on the number of classrooms that are there, I'm not having 30 people in that hallway because I've got 10 classrooms, maybe I've got 300. I need a set of double doors to accommodate that. I have now shortened that. Now I have to serpentine through it. That's a real problem. clear and unobstructed. Can't be reduced access. We need to keep it that way pretty much all the time. The problem I run into in the high schools is the orchestra area where they have the timpanis and the sousaphones, the tubas, and they stick those out in the corridor. I said, it's called the rehearsal hall. Yeah, but we've got the violins playing in there. Great, then do them in the ensemble room. I don't care. You can't store those things out there, including the 5 xylophones. Tom, the UPS guy just delivered that stuff, and he usually comes between 2 and 4, so that emergency exit door with the panic hardware is only blocked 2 hours a day. Okay? So you're telling me a fire can't break out into this school between the hours of 2 and 4, Monday through Friday? No, I'm not telling you that. Well, I guess I know what I'm telling you. Okay? It's an emergency exit, 24/7, 365. Yeah, but it always is. And you have to have a minimum amount of clearance. I'm not sure if you can see that. That's one of those big blower fans. And that's from a gymnasium. How many people do we got in that gym if there's an activity going on? Sometimes we're packed to the hilt. We're talking about maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And this is one of the primary means of egress. You know how many people can get out of there? We're not the ones that's engineered for, because they have to move that out of the way. And if it gets blocked, they're not going to die from the smoke. You know what they're going to die from? Being trampled to death. One-third the amount? No. Well, that's where we put them out there. I understand that. You're going to have to find some other place to go in and put them. That's where we store them, not anymore. Here's the rule of thumb that I tell my principals. Make it simple on yourself. You don't have to have a yardstick, okay? Here's what you do. If I've got a set of double doors, I do my J.J. Watt. I extend my arms like this, I start walking down that corridor, whatever gets bumped into my hands gets moved. Simple. If I've got a single door, I've got to have 3 feet. I do my Brian Cushing. Bump into something, move it. That's it. Yeah, but Tom, I've got the filing cabinet like this. I understand that. If you take the filing cabinet and you move it 90 degrees, you solve the problem. I need that minimum clearance, folks. The only time we will allow something like this is if there's a major renovation of a school going on, and usually, having dealt with you guys year after year after year, I know that usually happens during the Christmas season, and definitely during the summer season where you're pulling up the carpet in the classroom, and you've got this stuff stacked in the hallways, the regular, that's fine. You're not going to have 3,000 kids in that school. You may have, 150 or 200 workers, but that's a big difference, okay? We're talking about skulls full of mush, okay, having to deal with this stuff. Extension cords. Extension cords cannot be used as a substitute for permanent wiring. Surge protectors can, but extension cords cannot, because they're not UL rated. So what I tell all my districts is, the best thing to do is get a surge protector. If you need a longer cord on it, they make them that way now, up to 30 feet. You can have them plugged into that surge protector, and that is a substitute for permanent wiring, but not extension cords. How bad can it get, Tom? Rip ahead. Oh no, I got a better one. Quick, let's count. Okay, a surge protector, plugged in a surge protector, plugged in another surge protector, and then plugged in the electrical receptacle out. Okay, surge protectors are not designed to levitate. Okay, they need to be on the floor, affixed to the wall, a desk, or something like that. Also, you're inhibiting good electrical connections like that because gravity takes over. Gravity takes over. You can't do that. It's called piggybacking or daisy chaining. The rule of thumb is, again, the electrical device that's being powered, plugged into the surge protector, plugged into the electrical receptacle outlet. That's it. Yeah, but what about the extension? No, you can't put the, it's only one surge protector. No. That's it. End of story. It's real simple. But I have to buy a couple extra. Yeah, you will. But usually facility property management are real good about that, getting it fixed. Let's count. A extension cord there, plugged into a surge protector, plugged in another surge protector, plugged into an extension cord, and it's feeding another computer printer back over here. When electrical currents and electrical wiring do not get adequate flow of electrons, there's a breakdown. And the energy has to be transmitted instead of work energy, it's now heat energy. But specifically as far as fire code goes, it's resistance heating. And you can do that right now. That's resistance heating. You get enough of that, it starts breaking down the strands because they're very fragile. It starts breaking down the insulation. Any one of those two factors takes place, that's where you're going to have an electrical short, possibly a fire. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 possible fire origination points in that electrical grid right there. Because I can guarantee you, none of the appliances that are operating off that, at least at the far end right here, are getting the adequate amount of amps and volts that they're getting. And when they all get it to operate, you get resistance heating, you get resistance heating, you get the breakdown, you get the breakdown, you get a fire. But I need another outlet. Great. I look over at the FPM guy and I'm going, Kerry, Russell, whoever, we need another deuce outlet over here. Fine. Get it done. The principal says, yeah, but I put a work order in that our building mod about 6 months ago. You did? Did you guys get it? No? Okay, fine. The fire marshal says you need to get it done. Guess what? It goes right to the head of the line. Sometimes my inspections do have a good effect. Tom, I've been asking for that for about 6 months. You only have to ask for it one more time. Because they know. Yeah, guys, I pointed out it is a fire hazard. Space heaters, my favorite. Where are they usually? They're under the desk, right? Okay, what's combustible under your desk? Paper, trash can, last month's run reports. What else? Clothing. Clothing, right. What else? Who? What else? You! You can burn. Some of us, depending upon the amount of body fat we have, better than others. Okay? The point of the matter is, it's anything, including the desk. So it needs to be operated in an area that has a 3-foot arc in the direction of the heating element. So if it projects out this way, I have a swath, 3 feet. They usually don't have that. Now, I will tell you right now, some of the districts have asked me, Tom, can you prevent them from using a space heater? No. The districts may have a regulation for that. I know some of them say you can't have a space heater, you can't have a microwave, you can't have a refrigerator because we're going to charge you for that. That's fine. I don't enforce district rules. I enforce state law. But I can tell them, you can have it. But you are listed and have a tip guard on it, so that if it tips more than 45 degrees, the heating element shuts off. The fan may still be operating, but the heating element stops because it falls on the carpeting and won't ignite anything. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't checked your space heaters at home, please do that and see if the tip guard works and shuts the heating element off. And if it doesn't, do not sell it in the garage sale. Get rid of it, because you're just passing on a problem to somebody else. Right? Second thing, it better be UL listed and operated properly. I can prevent them from improperly using a space heater. You betcha. Like I say, you need to move it out, but that doesn't heat me. Well, then you need to wear pants. Or you need to turn down the AC or whatever you need to do. But you can't operate it within anything 3 feet of combustible. That's it. Fire extinguisher. It needs to be easily visible and accessible. I need to be able to get to it. This is in a kitchen. Trust me, I don't need to tell you what's on those other racks. I can't even get it off the bracket, let alone use it. I need to be able to walk up to it, unbuckle it from the bracket, pull it off, squeeze, pull the trimmer, all that stuff. I know it's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing in the world. I usually run into the problem with the elementary schools. Tom, it doesn't look really good. That's the reason we covered it up with a poster. I can't make it up. We wanted to decorate it. It needs to be able to see fire extinguisher. Well, we had to rearrange the room, so I had these moving carrels, and I usually run into this in the open concept ones, and they'll push a carrel right in front of it or a file cabinet. No, I need to be able to see it and access it. Just move it away. No?
One question, when I go through the inspections at some of my schools, some of those fire extinguisher boxes, you actually have to break glass to get to it. They doors won't open or they're locked. Nobody's got a key.
You can keep them unlocked. You don't have to lock them. In certain settings, they did that. We had a particular inspector that was a little overzealous. I said, Tom, yeah, I made him lock all the fire extinguishers again. I said, no, okay? No.
So that fire at Thornton, that the guy actually ripped 2 of them out of the wall, trying to get to the fire.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like, I mean, if this is in a controlled area, maybe where you don't have a lot of miscreants getting in, you know, that's fine. But, you know, I usually prefer the open ones actually hanging on the hook or the recessed boxes, that's fine. All they have to do is open it up, and it's usually like one of those little tabs, and then you pull it, it's a little difficult to shut it, but at least it secures it enough from inadvertently being bumped or accidentally being pulled open. Yeah, want to be able to get to it. Want to be able to get to it. Ah, my favorite. Okay, when we talk about 20% of the wall section, this is really where I get into a pickle because they want to understand what it is. Because I'm going to show you about a 2-minute video of what can happen on proper decoration. When we say 20% of the wall section, not a wall. Now this is corridors, not classrooms. Okay, this is corridor walls, not classroom walls. How do we figure this? This is what we're talking about, the area of 20%. So I usually tell the teachers or whoever walks with me, guys, here's what it is. If you want to be able to estimate it, those ceilings average anywhere between 9.3 to 11.6 in height, unless they're the real vaulted ceilings that are real high in the entryway. I usually don't have a problem with that. But we're talking about major corridors that end up spilling into the areas that actually service the classrooms. Let's just take an aggregate and a simple, baseline of 10 feet, okay? These ceiling tiles are 2 by 2. So if I want to figure out what 20% of this is, I'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. 18 times 10 is? Okay, you didn't realize this was going to be a test, did you? Okay, oral exam. And 20% of that is? Thank you. I actually had one AP said, can I borrow your calculator? Okay, anyway, so having said that, so you've got 36 square feet. How do I make sure I do not exceed that? If there's not a permanent bullet board on there. Simple. They've got this bullet board material they can buy at the Office Depot stores, okay, that they're even supply. Just make a 4 by 9, is that right? Yeah, 4 by 9, okay, and you can decorate it any way you want. As long as you keep coloring inside the 4 lights. Just like Judge Judy said, it's not 4 corners of the document, it doesn't exist. That way you don't exceed it, and you're fine. You can't have 3D stuff. Anything with dimension and depth, because now I'm increasing the fire load. It's not just flat pieces of paper anymore. I'm talking about styrofoam, foam rubber, the daisy chains. Oh my God, I get accused of being the Grinch that stole Christmas starting around late November. Because you know what the elementary school teachers want to have the kids do for Christmas? They want to make life-size Santa Claus masks. Now, what is Santa Claus beard and hair made of? Cotton balls. Imagine, if you will, 39 Santa Claus masks. Life-size. You want to see how fast a roll of cotton burns? Yeah. That's why. No. Didn't see that yet. Didn't see that yet. Okay. The reason we're so strict on the corridors, guys, is for this. When you're in a room, classroom, and you're going to a hallway, and then outside, the code says your means of egress has to be to an area that's as safe or safer. That's the reason the classrooms can empty into another classroom, but then they have to empty into the corridor. So it's safe in the classroom, it's safer in the corridor, because that is not an area where people congregate unless it's high school. Okay? It is a human highway. It's designed to expeditiously move people in and out of the building. So the safest area would be outside. Okay? So that way, we don't care how you decorate your stuff in the classroom except around the doorway. I'm going to get to that in a second. Because you're safe in there. You're getting out of that room. But when you go under the corridor, I don't have 30 kids. I've got hundreds and maybe thousands that are occupying that. The fire-rated construction materials that made that hallway are more fire-resistant than the stuff in the classroom. We don't want to counterbalance that by adding stuff that will easily burn. Because when you do, you've just made a horizontal chimney. And stop and think about it from a common sense standpoint. Are you going to run through fire to get to safety? No. So that's why we do that. And that's per wall sections. That's the reason we're talking about that, between two doors, between two windows. Because the 20% can vary, can it not? Depends on what the wall section is. That's what we're looking at. I was also real popular when Harry Potter was the rage. I mean, transplant trees. You can suspend it from the ceiling. You cannot attach it to the ceiling. When you attach it to the ceiling, you just now made that ceiling combustible. Remember, it's fire retardant material? Now you made it capable of burning. The best case scenario I had was in a particular high school, and I really agreed to do this. The science teacher was so proud of it until I told her she had to take it down. In the chemistry sections, they had a periodic chart. Each of the kids were paired up, and it was perfect 2 by 2, so they had the elements there. And it was great because they could use that as a study guide. They put it on butcher paper with a oil-based temper paint. The entire ceiling was covered with that, just made it combustible. Sorry you had to take it down from the wall. You can't do that. Okay? Suspended, how far down do you think? 24 inches. There you go, that's it, 2 feet. I don't care if it's on wire string, it's not attached to the ceiling. We're talking about classroom doors now. Just like we're not going to run through the corridor that's on fire, if that door is on fire, or the objects around it are on fire, are you going to run through fire to get to safety? No, it defies common sense. So if we can minimize the stuff that will easily burn around that door, we've done our job. How do you figure that out? We do the 3-foot rule. It's a 3-foot arc around the door. The exceptions would be if there's maybe a clock over the door, American flag, Texas flag. We're not going to ask you guys to move that. Okay, that's fine. All right. But this is on the classroom side and the corridor side. Oh my God, Tom, are you telling me we can't have door decorating contests anymore? No, you can have them, as long as you have aluminum foil on the door, and that's it. That kind of cramps your stuff. Well, what I do is I tell them, what they could do if they wanted to, is they can kind of draw the outline of a door, and they can put it in the corridor, so it's just 3 foot away, and doesn't exceed how much of a percentage of the corridor wall? 20%. You can have door decorating, just don't put it on the door. The exceptions are permanent bulletin boards because I realize I'm not going to ask the district to go ahead and move this stuff, because if this is 3 feet, it's 1.5 ceiling tiles, right? So technically nothing between here and the door. That's no man's land. In an arc and around there. If the permanently mounted bulletin board is right here, that's fine. I'm not going to make you move everything from here on over. But I'm going to say, from here to the door jamb is no man's land. The only thing you can have in those areas is anything that's specifically related to or life safety. Whatever that was. Get back over here. And I'd start with me too. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I went to a school the other day and they posted these pictures of students crouching down like the tornado drill, and it was above the map, the exit map. Are they okay? Are those kinds of posters okay?
Everybody hear that? I think that's a great example. Okay, they actually had pictures of students demonstrating what to do in case of emergency. Do you guys consider that fire and life safety related?
Yes.
Because it gives a visual indication? Absolutely. I got no problem with that whatsoever. None whatsoever. Now, have a nice day. Remember to bring your textbooks. That kind of bothers me when I see that in high schools. These guys went voting last year. And you need to be reminded to bring your textbook. Okay. But anything related to that, inclement weather, intruder, okay, shelter in place, that's fine. Okay. I give a little bit of leeway with the elementary school kids on bus schedules. I give a little bit because that's kind of safety. We want to make sure they get out there. That's fine. That's the reason why, folks. Okay? Except for that material, no. There's a physics reason behind that. didn't realize you're gonna get a physics lesson in this. Okay, everybody have a barbecue pit? If you don't, okay, don't try this. Take 2 pieces of paper, take a pair of barbecue tongs. I teach fire dynamics and fire modeling at the National Fire Academy, so this is one of the good elementary exercises. Take a piece of paper, go ahead and take your cigarette lighter, take the tongs and kind of hold it at a safe distance and light it. This is what we call a fuel lobe or a fuel package. In this particular position, in a horizontal position, it will take 3 to 4 minutes to completely burn. Take your second piece of paper, hold it like this, safely holding it, barbecue tongs, light it on this corner. It will burn 4 to 5 times faster. Same piece of paper. All I've done is change the geometry of the fuel and the space it occupies. So, if you were paying attention to high school science physics, why does it burn faster this way and this way? It's the same piece of paper. I'm not introducing oxygen into a fuel-rich environment. I'm not spreading it with gasoline. Nobody? Nobody? Okay, here's the deal. Do what?
I was just going to say, if you do it in the corner, it's going in 2 directions.
Well, yeah, but I can write to this corner and it's going to spread laterally. Paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, you got it. When I light it like this, as opposed to lighting it like this, when I light it like this, where is all the heat going? It's going up, right? Okay. It's not really heating anything. There's cool air entrainment from the bottom, heat air rises from the top. Basic principles of thermodynamics. When I turn it this way and I light it, I'm preheating this fuel. By the time it starts getting up to here, this is probably already 150 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to burn a lot quicker. So here's the question. What's the relationship of the fuel around this door? Right like that. That's the reason we tell them, guys. That's why we want the 3-foot rule. Pure and simple. You don't have to worry about running through fire to get out of the building. Literally. Now, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to have to minimize this because I'm having some problems on having it embedded and it wasn't working quite right. So it's a little dated, but I think it makes an excellent point.
This is going to be a display of a tree made out of construction paper and felt. And it's going to be placed near an exit where we have found displays often to be close to an exit in a classroom. We're going to ignite it at the bottom and we're going to watch it burn. We're going to measure how fast it burns and the intensity of the flame.
I realize that's three-dimensional, but it can still be flat against the wall.
It's about 9:30 in the morning.
Watch the clock. See how long from initial ignition to fully consumed takes. Standard construction paper, felt, no gasoline, no kerosene, no diesel, no accelerants. See the burning brands, they're going to the ceiling, the ceiling's going to start failing. Try and run out, you're going to have burning material actually adhering to you, especially if it's plastic. I'm not more concerned about the fire if it's more about breathing. It's heating up the oxygen in that room. 1 minute. 1 minute. See how it's spreading laterally on the wall?
How many seconds?
By this.
About 1 minute. All the paper is falling down. We've got a lot of fall down that's remaining burning. That's probably the felt. We still have burn on the wall where the construction paper is against a brick masonry wall. Still have burning, slow burn on the wall where the paper is attached to the wall. And this is because of the limited surface area on one side, and it's exposed to oxygen, but it's a slow burn. You see the V pattern. Got a little bit of residue on the wall from the burn. It's a clean burn. Still have some burning up on the hat rack. Where the wood has now ignited, you still have a little bit of residue from the felt. You got a lot of fall down, which all this in a classroom would probably have ignited other materials. This backs up the 20% rule, and even probably should be less than 20% in the classroom due to the combustibility of all the products in the classroom that are not rated. This will back up the fact that teachers should use a fire retardant material when decorating.
You get the general idea. I can't illustrate it better than that. I literally can't. That's the reason we have that 3-foot rule. I usually get blowback from the kindergarten, the pre-kindergarten, and the elementary school teachers because I realize we want to stimulate the children's minds. I realize they're very proud of what their kids did. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm worried about those kids being able to get out. And that's what they should be on almost their minds. I've done this inspections for over 10 years, folks, and I decided about 3 years ago to actually extrapolate the data over about the 200 schools that I did every single year, and I specifically targeted the elementary school campuses that had those grade levels in there. What we are requiring on that area on the door and in that 3-foot arc around the door, and by the way, when I say 3-foot arc around the door, I'm talking the same plane as the door. So if the wall is here, that's okay. They can decorate that. I'm talking if the wall in the same plane as the door. The surface area that I'm looking at on a single door classroom accommodating 25 to 30 students, roughly 40 by 40, this surface area represents anywhere between 3 to 5% of the entire surface area of that classroom that could be decorated. You're complaining because you can only decorate 95 to 97% of your classroom? No, I'm only asking for 3 to 5%. I don't think that's too much to ask. As a matter of fact, I'm going to demand it. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. That's how I try to sell them on it. I usually found out the teachers were very receptive when we digest it down to, okay, show me how I can buy into it. Show me the value-added aspect of that. Oh, that makes it. You know what's in here? I'll say this sometimes, and I'll see a light bulb go on. It's like when you talk to the students, the light bulb goes on, and they'll say, I do that at my house. Maybe I just save somebody having a fire at their house or something like that. I like to take this approach with educational facilities because I know it works, and I'm going to actually compliment Cypher about this. Ralph, you didn't ever hear this story, but about 4 years ago, I was shopping at Hobby Lobby. My wife is very crafty, likes to buy stuff. Okay, it's the Hobby Lobby of Jones in 1960. We were in the back line. It was around Halloween. She wanted to get festive things. Okay, fine. There are 2 ladies that are in the checkout line next to us. There are 2 elementary school teachers. They did not accompany me on the inspection. One of them says to the other as they're checking out the items, now remember the fire marshal was in school last week. He told us that. And the white guy said, you didn't say something? I said, no, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to let the goosebumps run over me. Were it not for that AP, guidance counselor, or principal that made sure that information trickled down, that conversation would not have taken place. So I know it works. So there's a little success story for you. I don't know who the ladies are, and I'd rather not know. But I do know this, they did not walk with me on that inspection. The only way they got the information back is because the AP took time. I suggest to them, pass these out at orientation in the fall. So that way when the big bad fire marshal comes by, you don't get all upset at why he has you take that stuff down on the door. You had it right there. You need to be able to read, comprehend, and there's another C there, comply with it. Okay, because they want to get all those good ratings. They want to get all those good ratings. Lastly, decorative lighting, the little fairy lights. Okay, little string. They usually have these, they put them on Christmas trees, you guys have them, okay? Here's the problem, if you notice, temporary use, seasonal decorative lighting, okay? Maximum of 90 days. That's not 90 days a year. That's 90 days period. Now that's not the LED strings because they do not create the heat. Those small incandescent lights are nothing more than regular light bulbs. They do generate enough heat. They're put together on 26 gauge wire. It's extremely fragile. And when that stuff gets moved, those strands break. Those strands break, guess what you get? What kind of heating? Internal heating, okay, resistance heating. That's where the fire will start. So I see this stuff decorated all the time, and now these manufacturers have gotten a great marketing tool. What you can do is you can buy the plain white lights, and you can snap on devices with them. So what you can do is when you get the ones with Santa Claus, then around Valentine's Day, you can go buy the packet from Hobby Lobby, and you can pop off Santa Claus, and you can screw on Valentine's. And then when Easter, pop off the Valentine's, put on the Easter bunny. Pop off the pumpkin, put on the turkey. Pop off the turkey, put on the Christmas tree, and you can have them strung all the time. No. 30 days. Now, here's where the question comes in. Tom, I have those same types of light on my Christmas tree. Bet you do. Well, I've had those on my Christmas tree for 5 years. Not a good idea. Because when do you usually start putting it up? After Thanksgiving, first week of Christmas, or first week of December? Take it down, maybe first week of January. That's your first 30-day period. Second year, second 30-day period. Third year, third 30-day period. Get rid of those lights. Change them out. They're made in China. Chinese are going to kill us in 3 ways. They're not storming over here. They're going to kill us with Christmas tree decorations like that. They're going to poison our pets or lead in our paint. They got it in for us. That's perfect. Do not be concerned about the red horde. It is not happening. They're coming in under the radar. Okay? But Tom, I just paid $325 for that pre-decorated, pre-flocked Christmas tree. Are you telling me? Yes. If you look at the male end of that connector, it says 90 days. If you got the LED, don't worry about it. Those are good for 3 years, 365 days a week, 24 hours a day. They do not generate heat. Those are perfectly safe. So I tell the teachers, if you want to stimulate them, because they usually run this in the special ed classes, where they want to visually stimulate the kids, get the LED rope lights. So they're protected from moisture, they're insulated, and they do not create the heat. If you want to leave them on all the time, leave them on all the time. Get rid of these. I actually had one teacher again, Cyfair. She remembered that I kind of signaled her out one year. Came back in there. She was very careful. The staple did not go through the wire. She stapled the receipt where she bought it from Walmart and when. She goes, Mr. Petty, I got 3 years, right? It's ready. I'm innovative, I love it. Okay? But seriously, if you have a fire in your house and you got these, and you have 3 strings of these and they're 16 bucks a piece, I can guarantee you, your fire is going to cost you more than 48 bucks. Replace the lights, do them with the LEDs. Ma'am.
We've had an issue going on. Some of our elementary schools have the interior windows, like on the pods, in the spring.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put these little curtains halfway along the window. Are those allowed or are those considered acceptable?
Spring, right?
Yes.
Well, Daryl's next door, so I can't answer for spring. But I say, unless you can prove to me, and it meets district specs, that they are fire retardant, and that's on file with the district risk manager, Daryl Simon, it's 3 feet. I had the problem with Aldine about that because they had some semi-open campuses in some of the Aldine schools, and they would have the windows around, and they would have 4 sections of windows, and they would have the curtains in all 4 sections. I had them take that first section off. No, you can't have that on those windows.
Okay, so
it's combustible material within that classroom door. It's 3 feet.
So the part that's by the classroom door, that has to come down, but the other one's going around can stay.
That's fine, as long as you maintain a 3-foot distance. Absolutely, I got no problem with that. If they're on the other wall and they happen to be windows, but there's not a door there, you can have it on those. I'm concerned about the means of egress being obstructed and being able to get out. That's my kicker. And the problem sometimes I run into with security is, but Tom, okay, the guys will end up getting in there. They'll see what's in the classroom. I'm sorry, I don't care if people can get in. I care if people can get out. Sorry, Ann? Yes?
We get a lot of different answers on this question, but basically on a lockdown situation, and we have the door windows. And we instruct our staff to lock the doors, turn off the lights, and cover that window.
Depending upon what type of threat it is, yes. Right.
It's locked in.
Absolutely.
Armed intruder.
Sure.
So, some of the fire marshals say, no, you can't have anything on that window. Some of them say it's okay, if it's during the emergency.
That's what your fire marshal has been telling you for the last 8 years. Because I'm the only one that's been out there. And if someone's told you anything else, Ralph, I'm sorry, they're wrong. Because again, sometimes this thing gets lost in translation a little bit. Because I'll go into the kitchen area sometimes, and the kitchen manager said, well, the fire marshal was here last year, said it had to be 2 cinder blocks down. Because those 2 cinder blocks were 8 inches, and that's, no ma'am, maybe you misunderstood. I was the fire marshal here last year. It's 3 feet. 3 times 8 is 24, that's 2 feet. 3 cinder blocks, oh, okay. No, on something like that, that's a safety issue. That's not a problem. Because it's only put up there temporarily, that's fine. Some of them do the big alligator clips, some of them have little Velcro things attached to them. Okay, and what they do is she actually has it in a little lap drawer. She grabs that thing, sticks it down there, lets it drop down by gravity, covers it, that's fine. I'm not concerned about that as long as it doesn't stay there. Is the situation over? Great. Where is that? Remove it from the door. That is not a problem. Everything I am telling you does not deviate from a safe school thing, trust me. Because I've gone through that training, and as a matter of fact, the guy that actually taught that course pulled me aside and goes, Tom, does anything that I'm saying contradict any fire codes that you're aware of? And the answer is no. The answer is absolutely not. No question? Okay, you ready for the test? Yes, sir.
I have one. Okay, so we're in Harris County a little bit, in Dayton. So the rest of us are in Liberty.
Okay.
We don't seem to have anyone besides me telling her. I didn't know if you can come in a little bit, or someone from your office come in and actually do an inspection.
Dayton ISD? Well, your territory may be, but I'm not aware of any campuses you have. Until you put a campus up there, I'll be there. I'll bring the donuts, you have the coffee, I'll come. And we can do the same type of thing.
Can we contract? The website for.
Yeah, you might want to talk to your district about that, because Waller has done that with us. We got a contract with Waller, but that's where it gets all the paperwork, and that's on civil paper. It's above me, so I don't want to say that. But yeah, for example, Pasadena has a very large district, but they've only got 1 campus. Okay, the ones I really feel, is anybody here from Katy? I don't see anybody. Oh, okay. You're the guys I really feel sorry for. Because you've got 4 jurisdictions. They've got the Fort Bend County Fire Marshal's Office Fire Code, they've got Waller County, they've got the city of Katy, and they've got Harris County. Oh my God. Bless your heart, you want to know you're going to because you served your time in that. Okay, because they mean different codes. But most of the stuff that we covered today, like I showed you on, that's 90-95% of what's in your code. Maybe just a little different. But if they adhere to this, these are the more frequent infractions that we see that are easily correctable, folks, and easily avoidable. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate the shop, Kmart.
Knowing I'm a firefighter, Mark Sloan walked into my office and said, we'd like a free lunch. And he said, Greg, here's the thunder drive you're speaking into at the Harris County Department of Education. Being in emergency management, something came up, so we apologize for not being able to be here. I'm going to give you just a brief overview. I think this is the PowerPoint, so I straight for the PowerPoint because I haven't seen it. But give you an overview exactly what it is. We are at the Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Many of y'all get our notices. Steve very familiar with our office. But some people have a misperception that we're kind of just sitting there in a box, and when an emergency happens, someone drags us out and we do our job. But it's actually a year-round effort that we do. And to put it in perspective, what we do, you have to understand sort of where we are. Oh wait, just one by one. In Harris County, 1,777 square miles of diverse rural, urban, and suburban landscape. 34 cities inside Harris County. The city of Houston being the 5th largest, and the fourth largest. And then in addition to that, we've got 33 other cities. If you take the unincorporated part of Harris County, the part that's not in any city, that would be the 5th largest city in the country. 125 law enforcement agencies, 54 fire departments, about 9,000 miles of pipeline crisscrossing Harris County. 35 presidentially declared disasters in Harris County. The only other 2 counties or local jurisdictions that have more than that are in California. We can attribute that to their annual wildfire ritual. We don't want to beat them at that number, but if you've been here for any amount of time, you know whether it's Hurricane Ida or Rita or response to Katrina that actually qualified as one, Allison, all those kinds of things are the types of things, larger events that we respond to. In terms of that being our geography, we're also a great place to live and to work. Our industry, despite the recent economic setback, we were probably better well positioned than any other place in the country because of our industry here. So we got hit later, got hit softer, and recovered a lot better. In terms of the Port of Houston, in tonnage, the 2nd largest port in the world, the largest export market in the U.S., top ranking in global trade. You look at the industries that we have here from healthcare, banking, obviously the industry along the ship channel. All those things contribute to where we are. It's a great place to work. Now, along with that, we also find ourselves in a place that's very rich with hazards. We're hurricane season. We've had a couple of storms spin up in the Gulf of the Caribbean in the past couple of weeks, and we're all aware that hurricane season is one of those things. One of those things that we drill and prepare for. I'm sure if your schools and your school districts have something they'll prepare for and plan for. It's just something that inevitably people get excited about in planning. And if you're prepared for a hurricane, you're generally prepared for almost anything else. So, in addition to that, we've got tornadoes. We're in an area that fortunately does not have a lot of those, but that's a potential. Flooding. You didn't know it during the dry weather last year, the year before that. But flooding, you remember we would have those periodic thunderstorms in the summer that, while not catastrophic, would make it very inconvenient for you to get home, to get your buses to where they needed to be, and all those kinds of things. Winter weather. One of the things that we've actually responded more to winter weather in the past 3 years than we've responded to hurricanes or tropical storms over the past 3 years. And y'all, if anybody knows how complex it is to deal with ice storms and winter weather, it's you. People just simply cannot drive in it. As school districts, you need to make that decision by 5 a.m., sometimes the night before, and it's a domino effect. If businesses start shutting down the day before, then school districts need to start making those decisions about whether the kids are going to school. Vice versa, if school districts start shutting down, the entire system has a cascading effect, and then we're starting to shut down cities and counties and all those basic services simply because if kids are going to be home, that's going to affect our parents. So that's one of those things where we collaborate with you pretty closely. Power outages, hazmat. I typically joke when we talk about hazmat that this is at least once a day. This is going to start buzzing and tell me that we've tipped something over or blew something up on a freeway. That's happened already twice today. So I'm hoping it's quiet for the rest of that. But why does that happen? It's because of the commerce that travels on our highways. Aside from the Port of Houston, everything gets to its final destination on a truck. Whether it's sent by a pipeline, whether it's sent by rail or a ship, eventually it makes it to a truck that gets on our freeways. And in Houston alone, the Houston District for TxDOT has enough concrete to get you from here to the sun and halfway back. So I promise you, somewhere along the lines today, or any day of the year, where we're mixing that kind of cargo along with our commuters that can't always drive the best. It's the truck drivers I'm not necessarily worried about. It's how our drivers interact with those truck drivers that tend to cause some concerns. And your bus drivers know. Building collapses, urban wildfire, economic losses, oil spills. If you haven't seen a major oil spill in a while, we did see the Texas City Y that happened a couple of months ago. Some parts of the country consider that a large spill. Our capabilities here, how the U.S. Coast Guard responded to that is something that we handle. I would say easily, but it's something that we're well equipped to respond to. Wildfires. That's actually something that we deal with more. It's always been on that matrix of what's a potential threat for us, but we really saw that in 2011 in terms of that historic wildfire season and that historic drought, where we actually had to respond to that. It's something that was unique to us, as well as the responders, as well as the community. When you've got, I think it was in August of 2011, at I-10 on the west side at the Beltway, where we had the George Bush Park wildfire, which caused a unique situation. Because now we've got this huge plume of smoke crossing freeways, and people see these helicopters dropping water on a fire inside the fourth largest city in the country, which is obviously a bit of a challenge how to communicate when you have to communicate to someone in the city of Houston that here are the Smokey the Bear people coming into your city to fight a wildfire. Diseases, I mean, it's, as we start talking about Ebola, those kinds of things that hit the news, the reality is we're just a plane ride away from another pandemic. I'm not saying to be worried about Ebola here, but I'm just saying that's one of the threats that we have to plan for and respond to. And obviously the potential for a terrorist attack. The FBI has 18 categories that are potential terrorist targets. And Houston and Harris County are the only urban areas in the country that have each of those 18 categories. So welcome home. And so to tell you how that happened, in 2013, last year we had 14 activations and monitoring events. That's one of those things where you either turn on the lights in the EOC or start bringing in additional staff. Most of these things are inconvenient. Some of those become larger emergencies, like when we did that winter activation earlier this year where we had to shut down the city and the county. And our philosophy is to lean forward, and if there's a potential when we meet the third threshold, is to start pulling the trigger to keep the public safe. I know the evening of making those decisions early this year to shut down school districts and to shut down city and county services, there was a little bit of pushback from the public. Then you woke up the next morning and you saw what happened in Atlanta. And those concerns very quickly went away. The reality is in emergency response and preparedness and emergency management, we're going to lean forward, rather make the right decision than to make the popular decision. 926 interagency meetings. We've got a staff of about 28 now. That's grown significantly since that started being restructured a little bit in 2007. And those are the kind of meetings when we start bringing all those partners and those stakeholders, from those police departments, fire departments, emergency management coordinators, state, local, and federal partners. Also our school districts, working with the Department of Education Center for Safe and Secure Schools. Those are the kinds of meetings that we attend and that we are a part of. 373 trainings, drills, and exercises. We've got a training and exercise sheet that helps our partners either design exercises or helps us be integrated in those responses. We each have our plans, and oftentimes some of those plans include how we bring in support of other partners. If we don't test those regularly, and if we don't know what our roles and responsibilities are in coordination with those other plans, they're in trouble. So we got to practice how we play and make sure we have the capabilities and the knowledge to be able to know how your plan affects our plan, as well as the simple trainings in terms of NIMS and ICS, how we have that common language to be able to work off of one another. 1,014 communications products that we will do. How many of y'all get notifications from our office when there's an emergency in the area? So, for those of you that don't, I'm going to leave my business card up front. We'll talk a little bit about how that is, but we also try to make sure that our partners and stakeholders. So, I broke some computer. So, in terms of training and exercises, that's really important for us to be able to do that, communicating all those things to our partners and our stakeholders so they have the information that they need when it's coming to that. And we also have hundreds of outreach opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of a little bit later on how that happens. So if that is our region, if that's our economy, if that is the risks that we're involved in, what is our mission as an Office of Emergency Management? And we took a look at that and we decided that our mission is to be a national model in emergency planning, preparedness, and response. One, because it's what the public demands of us, our elected officials expect it, and it's what our emergency management partners need to be able to successfully do their job. So how do we achieve that? We have a staff of 28. We can't do that alone. So when we're achieving our mission of being a national model, it's because of that collaboration with those partners, those law enforcement agencies, fire service agencies, emergency management partners, the cities, our federal, state, and local partners. All of those help us succeed at that mission, and it's a lot of synergy in terms of how we do that to be able to make it happen. So where does that take place? That takes place at Houston TranStar. How many of y'all have been there? Okay. So Houston TranStar, y'all been here long enough, you were here during Hurricane Ida or any other major emergency. When you see the county judge and the mayor at a podium talking about that response, that's at Houston TranStar, and that's the lobby. In 1996, that became the first facility in the country to combine emergency management and transportation under one roof. And it's a great thing that it happened back then. Unfortunately, in today's political environment, it would probably be hard to build a facility with 4 agencies pitching the money to make that happen. It is the city of Houston, Harris County, TxDOT, and Metro that are in that facility. TxDOT owns the building, and each of those other partners has some role in maintaining and helping us to stay in that facility. So, built in 1996, it's been replicated across the country in a few other different locations. But it's also had some challenges along the way. During Hurricane Rita, was the first time I worked out of there. We had hundreds of people responding to the hurricane evacuation there from Rita, which was obviously quite a mess. Then you fast forward to Hurricane Ike. We had more than 500 agents, more than 500 people representing more than 100 agencies in an emergency operations center that seats 28. So it was cozy. It was interesting, and you got to know people pretty quickly. And when you lock down and people can't come and go, it became a very interesting environment. So as a result of what happened during Hurricane Rita, and then during Hurricane Ike, we were able to secure funding to expand that facility. We just unveiled now at Charter Hurricane Season the new Emergency Operations Center, which now seats 98 folks. 88 in the actual EOC, and 10 in command positions to be able to bring in all the appropriate agencies and to be able to scale up. And even with that expansion, we have 22 agencies that are on a waiting list to be able to come in and take a seat for those kind of disasters. So how do we manage that? It allows us the ability to configure the seating in that EOC for however it needs to be. If it's a hurricane, then we'll have the appropriate people at the right places. If it is a threat that comes from a public health issue, then we will be able to then, move some partners out of those seats and bring in the agencies that would be more appropriate for us during a healthcare response. So, the CDC might not typically sit with us during a hurricane response. We'll have public health there from Harris County and our partners. But if it's a public health response, then some of those that are there specifically for hurricane, like evacuation folks and things like that, wouldn't be there. Those seats would be taken by somebody else. So no matter what time of the incident, we're going to be stretched to the building, but we adjust accordingly to be able to make that happen. And we'll also have some additional training space. The lobby is going to be enhanced a little bit. The biggest room we could house for training was maybe 50, and that's if you put chairs literally right next to each other, classroom style, and you got cozy as well. As that starts to be rolled out and hopefully completed by the end of the year or spring, we'll now be able to train 200 plus people in one room. That's something that we want to open up to our partners as well, to be able to have those trainings and have those meetings at a centralized location. So how does our office work? Because you see Homeland Security and Emergency Management in our title, which is a little different than you might see in other parts of the country. Section 418 of the Texas Government Code says that the county judge or the mayor are in charge for Homeland Security and Emergency Management in their jurisdiction. So our office does not have a law enforcement function. We work closely with the Sheriff's Office. They handle the Homeland Security part along with the Houston Security District. All the other law enforcement partners work with them as well. But they are, the Sheriff's Office designates about 5 staff that are housed with us, and so we can work closely together on those issues where they sort of intersect with one another. So we have the county judge who's in charge of that. He appoints an emergency management coordinator. Mark Sloan is emergency management coordinator you met earlier. I'm the liaison to the county judge for Homeland Security and emergency management issues. And being double-hatted, like most of us in the government job, I also am the public information officer for our office. So coordinate all the communication efforts, not only with the public during an emergency, but also with our partners and stakeholders to make sure that you know what we know and when we know it. So we're trying to become right-sized for our organization. A lot of that is that collaboration. And so that's sort of how that works. Because sometimes we get questions about this, is who makes the ultimate decision? We've got 34 cities, and each of those mayors have an emergency management coordinator. And they're in charge for that city. Our job is to support them. The only time that a county judge can supersede the authority of a mayor is for an evacuation. So, and we had to see that, unfortunately we saw that during Hurricane Ike, where some mayors along the coast had not issued an evacuation order. The judge stepped in and did that. Fortunately, because the evacuation actually waited longer, we would have had more people that were stuck and would have needed to be rescued. But A lot of that is just coordination and collaboration to make sure that we're working as a team. So we talked about all those risks and all those threats. So what is our plan for that? Because if we have, every time we get a unique incident like the tsunami in Japan that caused that nuclear radiological incident, we get a call as, what is your plan for a radiological incident? Or something odd happens, or what's your specific plan for this? We work off, we do have some very specific plans, but we work off of mostly what a basic plan that, go to this slide first. A basic plan is sort of the 50,000 foot view. That tells us what's our strategy, what's our mission during an emergency, and that's written in a way that we can apply it to any type of emergency or disaster in our community. Beneath that, we have the annexes. And that's helpful because then we start dividing up what are the main functions during any type of emergency. There's a law enforcement function, and that annex then tells us what is the role of law enforcement, what are they in charge of, what are they in lead of, what are they in support of, and how that process actually works. We have one for the fire service, we have one for evacuation, we have one for mass care, we have one for terrorism, we have one for warning, we have one for information. We have one for every letter of the alphabet. So what's going to happen when we do another annex? I don't know if we're going to numbers, I don't know if we're going to A1 or AA, but essentially that's how that works, and that's probably what I would call the 10,000 foot view. And the appendices is probably not something that's really more important to us, but that's really, what's the police chief's home number, cell number, how do we get a hold of him at 3 a.m.? If he's not there, who do we get a hold of and how do we get a hold of him? That's really where the rubber hits the road, and that's where we sort of make sure that all this planning is helpful, but that's giving you three views in terms of how we approach the planning process. Back to this slide, we talked about the basic planning, the 23 annexes. We're currently working on the Hazard Mitigation Action Plan. I don't think y'all are required to have this, but jurisdictions are required to have a Hazard Mitigation Action Plan. What we talked about earlier, we have to identify what risks are we susceptible to, how would we respond to them, and what can we do to mitigate that. It is an extensive, cumbersome, federally driven process for dollars. It is, don't get me wrong, it is a useful plan, it is a helpful plan, it helps us identify what we need to do to safeguard the community or things we can do to minimize the hazard. But it's labor intensive, so we have staff that's dedicated to writing that, updating that every 5 years, but that takes year-round work in between those 5 years. We have 22 cities out of the 34 that sign on to that plan. They're part of the planning process. They help us identify what in their community needs to be mitigated, and our staff goes back, writes that into the plan, sustains that, maintains that, to take that off of their backs. Because while we're benefited, but while we have 28 staff, some of our small cities only have an emergency management coordinator. If they're lucky, they have an assistant emergency management coordinator. If they're lucky, they have a planner. So, and oftentimes what you'll find in some of our smaller jurisdictions, the emergency management coordinator is also either the fire chief or the police, so they're also wearing two hats. And so we help them meet those federal regulations that are important to get their funding, and that's how we help. Some additional planning processes, because we talked a lot of this being collaboration. We do have the Regional Catastrophic Planning Grant, and that is a grant that contributes to the planning process. That's how we start looking at some of the regional plans. How do we respond to a region-wide incident? Those cover a lot of things. One of those, for example, would be what happens in a mass casualty incident near the airport if something were to happen. Incidents don't respect boundaries. So, if we have an airline crash, the chances of it falling just in one city or just in unincorporated Harris County and being the responsibility of just one agency are nil to none. So how do we have those planning processes in place? How do we come up with these scenarios and plan for them so at least we have a concept? I have yet to see a plan that fully survives its contact with reality, but at least those planning processes give us a starting point to be able to move forward when something like that actually happens. The Urban Area Security, the Regional Collaboration Committee, that basically is another stream of dollars that comes in from the federal government for major urban areas that are likely targets for a terrorist attack. So all those planning processes have to be terror related, but we can't just plan for that, so we get creative around that. Every once in a while you see us have an exercise, it's about a hurricane, but in the middle of the hurricane we have a terrorist attack. That's how we pay for those things. So hopefully we want to see people to pay that aren't here. But that is the way how we leverage those federal dollars to be able to spread resources throughout the region and have them. So, occasionally, actually every once in a while, we have hazmat HM1 go out to school because somebody dropped a thermometer or you've got mercury. So those are the kinds of federal assets that respond to those kind of things. There are at least 4 in the region. I know there's one in Tomball. There's Tomball, we've got Harris County, we've got Houston, I think there's one in the state, Sugar Land or Baytown area. But we've got those kind of assets. And when we talk about regional planning and regional assets, those are the ones that are put out there to be able to respond region-wide. And we've got the Joint Information Center group. That is how we get the information in a region-wide manner. One of the things, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's really important in terms of how we deal with emergency public information. And we're all speaking with one voice during an incident and taking into account that it affects each of us differently. So the driving principles behind all of those things are to communicate, cooperate, and coordinate. It's the 3 C's. We talked a little bit earlier about how the county judge is in charge of Homeland Security in Harris County. And people talk about this command and control concept. There's really not a whole lot that the county judge can do to tell HPD to do something or tell Jersey Village to do something. It's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of collaboration, getting folks to know each other well enough to know that we're all trying to accomplish the same mission. How do we coordinate for planning and preparedness? How do we work together on evacuations to make sure that those that, even though the people in Houston might be as equally scared about the storm that's coming, that our planning processes and our relationships are in place to make sure that the folks that are in Galveston Island and those that touch water actually get out first, and that those planning processes take that into account. On the Homeland Security side, we have the Regional Fusion Center that's out of the Houston Emergency Operations Center just down the street. That's where we've got law enforcement, local, state, and federal folks in the same room, gathering information, disseminating with our public safety partners, both in law enforcement and emergency management, to make sure we stay ahead of any trends and share that information. Critical infrastructure and key resources is something that's taking a more prominent role. Typically you consider these things as security, water, energy, telecom. But we've been really pushing our federal partners to understand the key resources to them. Might be similar to us because of the region, but we also need the capabilities to identify what our local critical infrastructure is. We need the HEBs to be open. We need the Walmarts to be open. We need the Targets to be open. And that's more important for us increasingly as, logistics have come a long way and they play a big role in the bottom line for corporations, but that means just-in-time world, a just-in-time world. If everybody starts, Walmart or Target or HEB has what they have on the shelf is probably all they have in the store. Long gone are the days we have all these boxes in the back that have all these supplies. So if we all make a run for those things today, we're in some big problems. So we have to understand how that has cascading impacts. We're working with the University of Houston, who's currently got an application in to be a DHS Center of Excellence. The specific thing they're going to try to focus on is critical infrastructure, so we're hoping that process is a successful one. We talked about UASI a little bit, the role the Sheriff's Office plays. The Houston Ship Channel Security District is actually a national model and something that is just a great concept. So it is a large area with a lot of critical infrastructure, may have massive impact on the national economy. And if you don't believe that, I'll tell you a story of Hurricane Ike. We got a call from the White House asking when the port was going to be open again. The storm had not even made landfall. That's how much of a driver it is, not only to save it for the national economy. With the Ship Channel Security District is a combination of public-private partnership. These facilities down the ship channel said, yes, I want to be taxed in this special district, and that tax revenue will go to this district, who's also supplemented by government dollars, so that we can have the resources we need to protect the ship channel, share that information, and make sure that they're on the same page, and be able to share that information through that kind of organization. 24/7, 365 is sort of the role that we play. We have typical work hours, but we do have one person that's dedicated on call every day that will take calls from our partners. They can email us or call that special number, and someone will pick up that call and be able to respond to those kinds of things. Both of those are hazmat, vacation, we have special events, transportation, obviously most of the things that we respond to are weather. So those are the kinds of things that we deal with on the emergency response side. Logistics is important to us. That's probably one of the biggest challenges when something actually bad happens. And we try to figure out on a daily basis how we overcome those challenges. It's great if all of y'all have a school bus contract, but if you have that contract with 5 people, and we're counting on you to do those school buses, there'll be a day when 5 people are asking you for those same school buses. Those are kinds of things that are challenging. If you have a generator contract, I can promise you whoever your contract is with has more contracts than they have generators. So you might need it today, it'd be easy to get it. If you ask for it 30 days from now after we're responding to a storm and we lose power, that's going to be a different scenario. So we try to work through those things. One of the things we learned during Hurricane Ike is actually to bring some of those vendors in with us at the Emergency Operations Center and the logistics section so that we can at least expedite that for you. There's a misconception that if you ask during a disaster, if you ask for it from us, then we're going to provide it for free. We don't do that. We will put you in touch with the people that have it, that are in the room with us if they have it, and connect you so you can work out the details. And the benefit of that is, one, they're next to us. They provide us a certain priority service so that we connect them with the right people to help expedite those things. The most interesting call I got during Hurricane Ike was the Federal Reserve Board wanting blue tarp for their roof. Now, the Federal Reserve Board doesn't have enough money to go out and buy a blue tarp, and I'm a little worried about larger issues than that. GIS support is something very important, and so we do that. Ham radio communications. How many of y'all know what ham radio is? So, I call them the nerd herd. So, it's these very geeky looking guys that sit in a room on this radio dial, and they talk to one another, almost any other day of the year. It's fun and it's a hobby, but they're really important for when communications go down. They come to Transtar because we dedicate a room just for them, where they come in throughout the year, they practice, they play, they're part of larger things. And there was a time during Hurricane Ike when we absolutely lost all communications. And during those about 30 minutes, there was one email that needed to go out. And I was able to take that thumb drive, give it to a ham radio operator, and somehow in that magic world of ham radio, they were actually able to email that document to another ham radio operator somewhere else where it needed to go. So it's amazing technology. It's not just people talking to each other on the radio, they can broadcast things, and that's an excellent resource. We talked about the importance of training and exercises and how many that we've done. Y'all do exercises on a smaller scale, either district-wide or each school. That's one of the things that if we can ever be of assistance with, please let us know. If you're within a city or a city ISD, you should probably coordinate with them first. We're glad to help. If you're in an unincorporated Harris County, we can certainly help you do that, and we'll put you in touch with Jennifer Suter, who's our training and exercise chief, and help you. They can help by either providing scenarios that we've already done for schools or school districts, or sort of walk you through the process of planning and exercise. On the preparedness side, we have Harris County Citizen Corps, which came out of the terror attacks of 9/11. We have probably one of the more robust Citizen Corps programs in the country. Only 2 other programs are larger. One is the state of Texas. It'll never beat that, right? There just has to be one more team somewhere else, and the count for Texas will be bigger, and then a jurisdiction somewhere else, and they cheat. But it's a great program. What we do is bring people in for 8 weeks, a couple of times a week, and we give them the skills that they need to be able to be ready for and respond to a disaster or even a small emergency in their community. Only 1% of our communities are first responders. So that means the rest of the 99 out of the 100 are going to have to find a way to take care of themselves. During an emergency, the calls for fire, the calls for a heart attack, people having babies, small accidents, those don't stop. So you can imagine add on top of that the calls that are specific to a disaster, those resources can become very quickly overwhelmed. So the more we train people to be prepared and on their own, the better off we are. We also have an exciting program called TeenCert. We have teenagers, that's a great program we've developed with schools, where we have teams out of schools and school districts that come and participate in that training process. And who mentioned Dayton earlier? Somebody mentioned Dayton.
From Dayton.
We had, I don't know if it was from Dayton ISD, but we had 2 students from a TeenCert that there was a school bus accident. So 2 kids had been trained. They sort of took over the scene. They got kids off the bus. by the time the first responders got there, the scene was pretty much already taken care of. They came in, did their thing, but either two kids from that training program that took charge and took care of their peers and were able to make things happen. So that's Harris County Citizen Corps. One of the things, part of that initiative that might be also interesting to some of your students is when you don't have to go through the training, but if you register through the Harris County Citizen Corps website, you can track your volunteer hours. Whether it is for a school program, whether it is someone that's being a coach on a team, anything that's a volunteer activity, they can go in and track those hours. And at the end of the year, or depending when they reach a certain threshold, then they get a letter of recognition at the end of the year. You know, that's great for a college application or something like that. If you want to get your students involved in, more information is available on the website, Harris County Citizen Corps, or you go to readyharris.org and find the link. That's probably the easier one and do that. So communication is probably the single most important factor in determining whether our response to a disaster, where it's going to fall in that very wide spectrum, failure and success. And you know, we work with school districts a lot, and we can say we communicate well, but if we don't get that message out of what we're doing to the public, it's that message, it's that grade that we get the glaring light of public scrutiny that's going to matter the most. So we try to change the dynamic in terms of how we communicate. For far too long, we just had to deal with a risk or a threat. The model for doing business is the need to know. That is, if I know something, it's because I feel I need to know it. That it's not my job to tell you, or that if you need it, you'll get it from somebody else. And we really need to change the way of doing business from need to know to need to share. If I know something, I need to share it. I need to share it with the appropriate audiences at the appropriate time with the appropriate amount of information, so that you know the threat that we're seeing or not. And let's be realistic. We can't always tell you with a lot of accuracy, you know, what's going to happen. All we can tell you is best case scenario and worst case scenario. And oftentimes, best case scenario is great. The worst case scenario is really bad, and we know it's false somewhere in the middle. But the more information we can provide you to be able to make those decisions is really important. You know, for anybody that's been doing emergency management for a while, 10 years ago, you had to make high consequence, high impact decisions in a very short time with just a little bit of information. Fast forward to now, where you can still have to make high impact, high consequence decisions in a little bit of it in a short time frame with tons of information. So the shortfall is still the same, it's information. But now you can't say, I didn't have that information. Now it's how do you sort through that abundance of information and get the nuggets you need to get out to be able to make those informed decisions. So that's something that we're struggling in emergency management. Public education, we talked about all the outreach events. If you ever need materials for your school districts or for safety training, anything like that, our preparedness, we've got an outreach person, and Lizette reports to me and let us know. We're glad to provide you with things. If you're part of that, to be kind of our outreach events, we believe strongly in that. If we can get better prepared, there's one less person we're going to have to deal with during an emergency. So the Joint Information Center, I came on board in the county in December 2004 working for Judge Eccles, and who was the county judge at the time, and I said I would give him 1 year working with the county. It's 10 years later, and I'm still here. So what happened was I said I'll be there for a year. 8 months later, all of a sudden, I got a call about 5 a.m. saying, look, can you meet at Transtar at 7 a.m.? The governor called and wants us to open up the Astrodome for 2,000 people. So, Steve, read that meeting?
I was there at 3 a.m.
You were there at 3 a.m. So, you got me. So my day was better. If you had looked on the drywall, I think it talked about maybe having a couple of security guards, a nurse or two, maybe a doctor check-in, a wheelchair or two, and what we thought we would need to open up an Astrodome for 2,000 people. By noon, that had changed dramatically. And I had never done a Joint Information Center before, but I had the training 2 days early, thanks to the fire marshal. It was a room that was maybe a quarter size of this, and the fire marshal came in and said, make this look like a Joint Information Center. He walked in about 3 or 4 hours later. There were 10 people around me. They all had a handset in their ear. It was buzzing and humming. He came in, he smiled, he gave me a thumbs up, and he walked out the door. But he didn't know as people were trying to get a dial tone. The only number that worked was the one for the fax machine, but we didn't know that number because we didn't have caller ID at the time. And if we could actually talk to the media, we wouldn't know what to tell them because it was such a dynamic situation. But one of the things that I did learn in that NIMS and ICS training is you give somebody specifically what they asked for. And what the incident commander said, he said, make this look like a joint information center. So we spent about the next 3 weeks we created what was essentially, until the BT Horizon oil spill, was the largest joint information center anywhere in the Texas Gulf Coast history, possibly even the country aside from probably what happened in 9/11. So we said we really need to be able to do a better job at this. But immediately after Katrina, we moved into Hurricane Rita, and that joint information center of over 100 people. For a storm that would now hit us, turned into 3 people at Houston Transtar. And we were tired, and we thought we were doing a great job. And you go back and look at the news releases that we did now, it wouldn't have passed your 5th grade lit class. So we decided we need a better planning process, and now fast forward to Hurricane Ike, is we have a robust plan and a system in place to be able to do that. And one of the challenges we have to overcome is what happens at Transtar is we have the capability to broadcast live. So that's why you see the county judge and the mayor live on television. We tend to drown out the messages from our local jurisdictions, not just the people in Harris County. But the mayor says it's not stop at the city line. What the judge says it's not stop at the county line. It goes down to the 10th largest media outlet. So if you have a mayor, like we had a mayor during Rita that says, if you've ever flooded and you're hearing my voice, you need to evacuate. It goes very contrary to some of the jurisdictions that were saying, guys, stay here, you're a tomball, you don't have to evacuate. So we learned very quickly that we can drown out the message of our local partners. So the Joint Information Center process allows those partners to be a part of that Joint Information Center. They can either support us either virtually, or they can support us there to make sure that we are on the same page in terms of making sure that the message that you need to get out gets out in a timely way. As far as hurricane season goes, people look at the forecasts all the time. The only forecast that I believe is the one I got yesterday. And so, we've had a couple of brushes with storms in the Gulf this year. It does not matter. All it takes is one to make our lives go upside down. If you look at Hurricane Alicia, that was the only hurricane that made landfall that year, and it happened to strike us. How many of y'all can remember the storms that hit before, that we responded to before Hurricane Ike that year?
I remember Alicia.
Okay. Yeah, that was during Hurricane Alicia. I was in junior high, and my sister and I were watching Poltergeist as the windows are rattling, and just as the scary part is when the lights went out. So never done that again. Tropical Storm Allison. But during 2008, during Hurricane Ike, we actually responded Dolly, Edward, and Gustav before that. And nobody remembers them anymore because the only one you remember is the one that hit us. And it can be a bad year for the East Coast, and I don't care. But if we get one storm here, that's the one that we're going to remember. So that's the important thing, is to be to be ready for that. For folks that deal in the operations side, and I'm sure you work closely with your emergency management folks, on any given day, something can happen. So our job is to be prepared. We want to be a partner for y'all. So if there's anything we can be as a resource, let us know. Any questions?
The state of the economy, not the economy, but national security right now. There's a lot of chatter going on about 9/11. What would we be getting any kind of briefing at all, any information if the national, Britain raised their alert level, if the United States raised theirs? Are there any plans in place or something?
So on any advance warning for any credible threat, that would come from law enforcement. The Fusion Center would communicate anything that would be appropriate to your ISD law enforcement agencies. That would communicate if it's something that's related to that. It would communicate to pretty much across the board to law enforcement. On the emergency management side, while we would have some knowledge of that, and if there's anything that's even known, we would get that, but that would come from a law enforcement agency and the right folks, because we don't do on the law enforcement side. We're mostly involved, that fails, and to be able to provide resources to respond to that, or resources for them to be able to get that information. That's what we do. Any of that would come from, but if for some reason if the alert level for some reason went up, that's something that we would communicate partner-wide. Anything else? All right, y'all are an easy audience. So I haven't been doing emergency management my entire career, but I know in terms of threat and risk assessment that I'm probably the only thing standing between you and the end of this meeting. So I will leave my cards out there, and if you have any questions, feel free to just contact me.
I want to thank you for coming today, and guys, this is our first meeting of the year. Our next meeting will be on December 4th. Anita will be sending out emails and information, and if you have any topics of interest, please let us know. And Steve is going to give you just a quick announcement on tabletop.
Just give you all a real quick message here. One thing that we did at the request of one of our local districts last year, we're happy to work with any district that wants us to come out to help y'all put on any kind of tabletop exercise. Last year what we did is went out to a specific school for the district, did a walkthrough with my members of staff, got a little bit familiar with their names, and how to actually develop the scenario. Went out and facilitated the exercise. They pulled the administrative staff and some of the people they identified as the emergency response team in that house to a neutral location. We made a very simple scenario, basically just to test themselves internally on what their policy said, what their plans were, if they were familiar with their plans, and how they would respond to an intruder scenario. As a member district, we've had to be up to y'all, we have no charge to y'all. Just keep that in the back of your mind. It doesn't have to be anything district-wide, it doesn't have to be anything fancy or elaborate. Again, we just went out and tested one relatively small area. That's the other things that we got from the center.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.